Yeah, but see, that's why it's incumbent on us to drag people back to reality and take away these two realities, force it to become one reality. And something that I've come to realize lately is that it really is.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
I wouldn't trust Kyle Kulinsky with an anime pillow, let alone whatever he's saying right now.
George Floyd is looking up at us from hell, and he's so happy. He's so happy that they burned down that little old black lady's shoe shop.
Kyle's a straight man. The reason why his hair is blonde and he comes off as gay is because of how often he sucks his own dick. Only Kyle has all the answers. You could say that about anything. Kyle Kulinsky tried to rape a dog, but he just failed. You could say anyone tried to do something and failed. It's so cowardly. With the identity politics, now that's outlived its usefulness. Just like feminism did, just like xenophobia did, just like black people did. All of them outlive their usefulness and they move on to the next thing. That's a sign of communism. Welcome, comrades! I'm RD, short for rhetorically defective, here with my vagina-adverse co-host Patrick, and we are Done With It, a podcast that's dedicated to the sea of communists that just don't get enough attention. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube to see the video of the podcast, link in the description. Patrick, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I am getting kind of vagina adverse though because of how much they keep hurting me. So like pretty accurate intro. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to talk about these two douchebags today though.
So we've covered on the ground American Communist Party, brazen in your face communism. We've covered ethereal space demon, theory driven queer Marxist communism. This is the kind of communism that we really deal with every day. Now we're going to cover some content creators that don't call themselves communist, but anything that rejects liberalism on the left invariably goes towards socialism. And the point of socialism is to go to communism, right?
Exactly. Especially with these two individuals. I would say there's one who would probably be more willing to openly identify as a communist, whereas the other one sort of paints, I don't know. We'll see. They're both interesting because they're both communists. They just don't openly call themselves communists, but they're full of shit.
Well, so which one do you think would say they're a communist?
Between Kyle Kulinsky and Vaush, I would say that Vaush would say he's a communist.
Well, he's a socialist.
Yeah, so I mean, right, he's willing to call, like, what would you say? Kyle Kulinsky, what does he identify as, a progressive?
I don't know anymore. They don't say it. I mean, when you talk to a typical Majority Report watcher like Sam Cedar, it's like, oh, he's just a regular lefty. And then he goes on the PBD podcast and says that he wants to make it illegal to make a certain amount of money. And then has socialists on and communists as his employees on the show, so...
And like socialist is, I mean, you call yourself a socialist, you're like, I mean, you're a half step away from saying you're a communist. Whereas like a progressive is a communist. It's just a much safer way of saying communist.
The point of socialism is to go to communism. The point of being a progressive liberal is to go to socialism.
Exactly.
It's the same end point. As if the progress stops progressing at a certain point.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like a criminal offender who's like on a very clear pathway to like committing more horrific crimes. He's just at like earlier steps and hasn't quite yet pulled the trigger, literally and figuratively.
During the BLM riots, any Democrat that was going, it's just property. Oh, well, that distinction between property and human life in terms of giving a shit about it is anti-liberal and specifically communist.
Yeah.
Because they weren't destroying property, they were destroying capital. They didn't destroy anyone's personal homes, just their businesses, the things that make money.
Exactly.
All right.
How are you holding up? You know, I've been kind of like minimally consuming other people's political content for a little while because I'm a bit oversaturated on it. So I'm feeling out the room, you know?
I'll just say I'm really glad that I wasn't streaming live on election night. Because man, the right would have had a field day with that. I mean, I was the dude who, you know, Crystal was live and she was texting me and she was getting Doomer pretty early. And I was like, no, there's no reason to get Doomer yet. Like there's these certain suburbs where she's picked up a certain percentage. I think she's still going to hold on. Remember the red Mirage from 2020. And then within like an hour and a half, it's like, oh no, now it's time to panic.
Yeah, it's like, okay, all she needs to do is get 93% of the remaining votes in every single one of the blue counties left. And it was a pretty difficult night. I think that in retrospect, it all makes a lot of sense. I guess I just didn't like the argument that the Democrats have done a really poor job outlining their message and appealing to people under the guise of somebody who can change the system. I believed that. I didn't realize it'd be that much of a factor. That was a huge...
Dude, I got a cop to just being flat out wrong on this election. I was telling my audience,
I got a cop to just being flat out wrong on this election. So there's going to be a reoccurring theme here, okay? There's a lot of imagination that's going on, saying that what the right would have done, what Trump wants to do, what they want to do. And we're not really going to be spending a lot of time in this reality, the reality that we all share with each other. They're going to be living in some kind of other reality. How would you describe that other reality that they're living in?
I would call it a hyper reality of their own creation.
Why would you call it a hyper reality?
Because it's hyper real, as in there's been so much manipulation into how they view reality that it no longer actually conforms to what is the closest thing we could refer to as an objective reality. They're delusional as shit, man. I mean, they literally sound like high school girls discussing why boys don't like them, and and they can't quite ascertain as to like why the boy doesn't like them. It's hilarious.
That's actually a really good analogy because they're so used to being liked for the last 4 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they just can't take it. They can't take that they lost. Yeah.
that I think she's got it. I mean, I had criticisms of the campaign. Of course, the Liz Cheney stuff comes to mind right off the bat.
Oh, you didn't like that?
Not at all. But beyond that, I mean, I thought, I'll put it like this. I was convinced she ran a way better campaign than Hillary did in 2016. And I thought Trump's 2024 campaign was the worst of his three campaigns. So that's why I felt relatively confident. Yeah, that's why I felt confident. But, you
can't feel bad for getting it wrong, right? Because clearly, like, when you see him at the victories.
So what we're about to witness is a lot of people call it cope, and it is. But it's also going to be a desperate attempt at alchemy to try to change the reality. So somehow this was Trump's worst campaign, but he was the most popular he's ever been.
I know, right? He won more votes than he ever has before, right?
Yeah.
I think so. And it can't be that Kamala is one of the worst candidates to ever. I love these idiots. How they're like, if Kamala only had more time in front of the camera, you think that more visibility for Kamala Harris would make people like her more? What? She's the most unlikable, she has no charisma. It's the media was going to vapidness.
They act like the media is against them when the media machine hasn't only been behind them for the past 8 years, but but also the media was behind her, synthesizing her into someone who's running for president.
All they ever say is that the media just lets Republicans do whatever they want, and then they just hold Democrats to task. When does that ever happen? I'm sure it happens sometimes, but it always happens when the media gets a message and it's like, we need these politicians to fall in line. Like when they forced Biden out, all of a sudden they started attacking Biden because they needed Biden to drop out because they wanted Kamala in. So that does happen. But the idea that the media is more in bag for the Republicans than the Democrats and that they don't hold them accountable it's absurd.
But it's actually, so I am saying this in an official capacity. You have to have a cluster B personality disorder to be on the left at this point, because they'll flood the country with illegals for 3 years and then not do it for 6 months and go, what are you talking about? They'll talk about all this quote unquote woke, which is just communist. They'll talk about all this far left stuff that they've been talking about. And they're like, she didn't run on that. Yeah, we didn't forget it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they say it later on too, which we'll talk about, but it's like, okay, so she's not overtly running on woke. She's literally running because she is a black woman. That's why she's running. She's running from an intersectional lens. And the last 10 to 12 years, all of the groundwork for the Democratic Party that has been laid has been woke. It's just in the background, waiting in the wings. It's not nearly as dead as everyone thinks it is. So they don't even have to actively run on it because it's so unpopular without it actually still being their modus operandi of what they want to achieve. It's
they had a spaz non-binary Sam whatever his name is where he stole luggage.
Yeah, Sam Britton.
Yeah, like these people are like in the government, and it looked ridiculous, and everyone thought it looked ridiculous. Whoever that person, the assistant, whatever in health, Rachel, whatever, the obvious
Dick Levine,
frumpy man that grew his hair out.
That person needs to be
forget about that. Just completely forget about that. Also, Biden is the most popular president in history. And then if he wasn't polling well and they didn't want to run him, I guess that means you guys fucking suck.
Right?
I guess you guys did a bad fucking job, is what that would
exactly.
say.
It's hilarious, too, because this was literally like prophesized by like Vivek Ramaswamy and others that there is no way in hell that Joe Biden would be the nominee going into the 2024 election. And lo and behold, look what happened. I can't believe they ever actually expected him to be the 2024 nominee.
Well, I mean, as time goes on, we find out that more and more things were happening in the background as these things, tend to come to
that's
fruition.
true. That's true.
Speech. The Trump campaign also didn't expect the win as they did. Like the saying there was fraud in Pennsylvania, then he withdraws it afterward because his advisors are like, we won like fairly. Let's not taint the victory with fussing, No, but I don't think anyone expected this really.
Yeah, but you know what? It did kind of scare me off of making predictions for the future because I swear, I really thought I was hot shit there for a while because in 2016, I thought Hillary would win, but
what a
he
fucking
thought he was
douchebag.
hot shit. He doesn't still think he's hot shit, right?
Well, I mean, he's got that new haircut. It's not quite blonde. It's not quite white. It's silver. He's feeling pretty good about himself with his terrible goatee. He's feeling like he's hot shit. And then his predictions don't come true.
Kyle Kulinsky's politics are about him being right and his team winning. That's it. There's no limiting principles. He's about to say right now about how right he was in other circumstances.
There's no honor. There's no honor at all. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. All that matters is just winning.
I predicted like squeaking it out with 270 something electoral college votes. And I was warning everybody about Trump like nonstop. I felt like he could really win. And then 2020, I correctly predicted Biden. 2022, I was more right than other people because when they were saying red wave, I was like, I actually don't think it's going to be a red wave. I'm kind of agnostic on what it's going to be. And that turned out to be right. But then this time I was more certain than I've been about others and just the most wrong I've ever been.
This is like flipping a coin and being like, yeah, I called heads a few times. Yeah, you have two options of how it's going to go. It's a 50-50 shot.
Exactly.
I mean, imagine being Seltzer, she's off to a farm upstate, she's in a better place now. I think it's like, because I think you're completely correct in the campaigning stuff. I think that Kamala ran a really good campaign for the most part, like within the time and I guess the ideological confines of being a neoliberal. And Donald Trump was like a sloppy mess the entire time, like genuinely. It kind of, it's how people say debates don't matter? I guess campaigns don't matter either in a way. It's basically just, do people think you vibe well or you don't? And no one was sold on Kamala Harris there, which I guess like from a vibe perspective or like an energy perspective, I can't say I'm surprised. I just thought there would be some relationship between how sloppy Trump was the whole time. And
totally. And like, I think his anger, I really...
Do you want
He's
to
a
know
neoliberal.
How Trump seemed sloppy is because he was just talking like a regular person. He wasn't being presidential. He was having casual conversations.
He's like, he seemed like he always, I mean, there were some slight variations on how Trump was this time compared to 2020 and 2016, but he's always just Trump, just speaks off the cuff and says silly, stupid shit that people like, gets him in trouble.
It's
but then
not even
everybody
necessarily interesting, though. Like, I don't listen to like a Trump podcast. Like, it's not even that entertaining or insightful or goes very deep. It's enough to just show that he's a regular guy that can maintain an improvised conversation without needing a teleprompter.
Yeah, exactly. And I do love how these people are pointing out how Kamala Harris is a neoliberal, which is hilarious because a neoliberal is just a Fabian socialist, which is another form of communist.
Well,
so she's just another form of communist. They just don't like her because they're not pure woke communists.
Well, no. So what do you think a neoliberal is?
What do I think a neoliberal is?
Yeah.
Neoliberal is like a class of politician that mostly arose out of the post-war consensus from World War II.
Okay, so if you just like look it up in the dictionary, a neoliberal favors policies that promote free market capitalism, deregulation, and reduction in government spending.
That is such horseshit.
Like, that's just conservative.
That's not a neoliberal. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
But cool. Hey, I'll take that neoliberal title. Yeah, all right, cool.
But they want to maintain a global world order to push us closer and closer to one world government.
There's nothing more neoliberal than giving out $25,000 for a down payment, $6,000 for trying to tax capital gains with money you don't even have yet, and price gouging on industries that have a 2% profit margin. Very neoliberal, right?
Well, and that's what's hilarious is because the words don't matter. It doesn't matter what she is.
I know, but it's a pejorative. The word
words.
when liberal is being used as a pejorative, that is when we are being communist.
Yeah,
from the left,
or fascist. Yeah, depending.
Well, from the left.
Yeah, correct.
In retrospect, I feel like just the fact that he's really angry all the time, I think that helps him because people feel like, well, I'm angry and this guy's angry. And the other thing he does,
Does Trump ever come off as angry? Think of all the shit he's been through and how evenly keeled his voice is. When does he yell?
When
does he scream?
No, he never screams, and he's always at least like everything is coded in like being a joke in sarcasm and has a really, really good sense of humor. Yeah, exactly. I've never holy crap. Listening to Kamala talk about how Donald Trump will never again touch the office of the president, she's literally screaming and scowling and pointing.
And cackling like a fucking hyena.
Yeah, but no, Donald Trump's the mean, angry one. Yeah, that makes sense. So everything is projection. Everything.
Democrats don't do is that he has a narrative, but his narrative is like incredibly incorrect. He blames immigrants for every problem and trans people for every problem and, Hollywood and cultural elites and Democrat. Like he's got a narrative and he hammers away on it all the time. The Democrats are not angry and really they don't have a narrative. The only Democrat that has
the Democrats aren't angry and don't have a narrative.
The Democrat narrative is what drives the entire
society
machine. Yes. Because the dialectic moves leftward, and so everything that is driven in politics is driven by the Democrats' narrative. Everything that Republicans do, the majority of the time, is in direct response to what the Democrats are doing. The fact that he says that they don't have a narrative and no like story to join them together, he's either lying or completely delusional.
Yeah, hold on. The Democrats don't have a narrative. It's just that there was protests across the country during a pandemic lockdown. By the way, round of applause, everybody. We stopped racism because they haven't said that shit for 4 years now. Where'd the racism go?
Well,
Where'd
racism
the cops
is
killing
just
black people go?
It's still happening. It's just that it's baked in, and they're changing all the institutions now, so they don't even have to overtly talk about it to let the system operate as it's intended to. It's just operating in the background like it's like a virus software in the back of your computer, except it's just causing more viruses instead of getting rid of viruses. That's what it's like.
Has a narrative, of course, is Bernie Sanders,
who everyone loves, who goes on like every Theo Vaughn or Joe Rogan, and people still love listening to him no matter where they're from. I saw him on Lex Friedman's the other day, and all the whole comment section, people who I imagine in a lot of cases voted for Trump are still like, yeah, man, he was the one good Democrat. I think, it does seem like a lot of Americans just want like an angry man TV president where he says something and they can go, yeah, and that's it. Like that's
right.
Yeah.
Social media. I feel like social media has really helped fry our brains, and TV has helped fry our brains, where we really have the attention span of like nanoseconds now as a country. Okay. And so there's a factor of just being a controversial and charismatic celebrity that Americans just flock to, right? And that's why I've been saying like Jon Stewart for 2028, because that's a part of Trump's appeal that people really haven't talked about when it comes to Trump's appeal, which is he's really controversial, he's really charismatic, and he's a celebrity. And this country loves all three of those things.
What makes Trump controversial is he doesn't bend the knee to you people. That's what makes him controversial. Yeah. He's pretty much a 90s liberal in terms of policy.
Pretty much. And the number one thing that people like about him is, even though there's a bunch of issues with him, he will just say, or at least appear to say, what is on the tip of his tongue, on the front of his head at any given moment, and does not care because if you listen to him talk, he speaks in like sort of very simplistic terms, but he's actually describing much more complex things, like saying about how Kamala used to be Indian, but now she's black. Other people are like, what? That's so stupid.
He has to speak that way, though. He has to.
Yeah, I know, but there's an actual like complex thing that he's trying to discuss there in terms of how she manipulates different groups based on these characteristics of her identity, right? But Trump's just saying it in his own way.
They lie about, like when he said bloodbath, they openly lie about every single thing that he says. So obviously he's going to have to speak at all times in a much more vague, nebulous way, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's not going to talk like Vivek or
wait till he's in office, though. Then I'll see how he's going to speak.
And he's really authentic too, in the sense that he comes across as someone who's speaking his mind. Like one of the biggest, I think, and this is what's making me like really doomer about, I guess, the next election. And I'm not hyped about the concept of Democrats winning in 2028, in the sense that I think they'll save the country. Honestly, I just think we'll need the break after Trump's term, if we even get the chance to. But it seems like you look at all these discussions across the board, all these pundits, and they're talking, okay, so what did we do wrong? What can we do next time? And leaving aside the fact that a lot of them have wildly wrong answers, like wokeness, cut her campaign in half or whatever. A lot of them don't seem to understand that you have to believe something to believe something. Do we go more pro-worker or less pro-worker? More woke, less woke? Donald Trump, when he rose up in 2016, he just did his thing.
The usage of worker is communist because it's workers against the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, exactly. Should we
Pro-worker.
go more communist? Yeah, exactly. And also, it's funny because, should we go more pro-worker or less pro-worker? But I'm sorry, at this point, your collective base, you're losing the workers. There are so many people in these unions that are blue-collar workers that are conservative in nature. They're voting for Trump against their own interests in these unions. You lost the workers. Vaush, I'm really sorry. Now you're stuck with the identity groups. You have no choice but to go more woke because that is the way
They're trying
your
to move
coalitions
away
are
from
set
the
up.
identity groups so
They can't,
badly.
though. They can't.
And bullied the entire GOP into falling in line. Bernie Sanders as well. But because they're not like consultant-driven politicians, but anyone the Democrats field, they're going to have the way they check their watch is going to be like field checked by a bunch of, Hillary Clinton staffers who now work as consultants for $250,000 every year. And I think people see right through that now. I don't think anyone wants that.
Yeah, and like just the idea of having a consultant or having an advisor on the issues, if you really stop and think about it, what a bizarre thing to have. Like, I don't need...
Kyle Kulinsky thinks he is the fucking coolest, fucking most knowledgeable guy that's ever fucking existed. He just thinks everyone needs to listen to him. And him and Cenk Uygur started the Justice Democrats that got AOC elected. Did you know that?
Yes, I remember hearing that about that last year.
Right,
actually.
so he's already tried this fucking bullshit. You and Cenk, and of course, no one on the left can actually get along with each other. Only when Trump becomes president, then they start talking to each other. It wasn't like Vaush and Kyle were talking to each other, forming a coalition. No, it's only when they lose they go, shit, should we do something different and stop being in our insular echo chambers that aren't effective at all? And so what do they do? Quintuple down on their shitty strategy.
And that's what's so funny is that they're communists, so they're supposed to be collectivists. But I'm pretty sure why communism has never worked all throughout the history of mankind is because even though there was no definition or term for it, they've always just been comprised of a bunch of cluster B sociopaths.
They deny their individualism.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be collectivists, but they're all cluster B, so they can't work together. So then they accidentally end up killing hundreds of millions of people. It's the communist way, and it's true with these two retards here.
Somebody to tell me, here are the things that you should prioritize over other things. I just have certain things that I prioritize that I would talk about and that I would put out there. And you're right, that the Democrats are really beholden to this idea of like, finger in the wind, where's it going? How exactly do I weave a message out of this? And it's like people just see through it and really get the sense of like, you don't stand for much of anything. Like, I don't necessarily believe anything you say, because even if you're saying some things that might be true and correct and a good policy, how do I even know that you really mean it? And so there's this big, like, massive optics problem. Because the other thing is, like, I
never hear the right talk about optics. Only a narcissist is just obsessed with how they're perceived, but you don't have to worry about how you're perceived when you have underlying
integrity,
principles.
honor, truth.
Right.
Also, look at Kyle's face. Do you think that's the exact face he makes when Crystal pegs him every night? I feel like that's definitely. Just look at his eye; it's like a little off. That's definitely his pegging face.
Look at his eye. Look at the hair. Like, dude, you are eternally stuck
so,
in 2003.
It's really, really bad. It's really bad. He's listening to Sum 41's first album right now, even though he doesn't fit the vibe of his look. That's what
man goes
to.
bleach blonde at this point and doesn't swallow dick?
I don't know. Crystal might have a dick. She has kind of masculine features. So
genuinely surprised under the Biden administration. Foreign policy completely aside, because the Gaza genocide is the worst thing I've ever seen. Yeah. But on economics, I was genuinely surprised, and I know Crystal too was genuinely surprised that they came through on economics in a
Also, telltale sign the Gaza genocide is the worst. Anyone that's full-throating Gaza is the worst thing ever is a communist. That's the only function of this. It's not like this just happened, between fucking Israel and Palestine. This isn't a new thing, but all of a sudden, like, Do you think maybe that's where you guys are losing it, where you're trying to call what's happening in Gaza a genocide, even though their population quadrupled in a few generations?
Yeah, I have varying opinions on what's happening in Gaza, but in terms of loss of life and everything, it's not even the worst conflict that's happening right now throughout the world. So the fact that he's going to say it's the worst thing he's ever seen is hyperbole.
It's a genocide. There's a trans genocide, Gaza genocide. Maybe that messaging is what's making you guys so unpalatable politically.
I do think that Israel wants to get rid of all the people there.
Sure.
So I don't know what it's going to end up being eventually, but we'll see, I guess.
In a way, no president in my lifetime had. I mean, he blew Obama out of the water and Bill Clinton out of the water. The NLRB appointments are phenomenal. Did project labor agreements, raised the minimum wage for federal contractors and employees to $15 an hour. That's like 400,000 workers. Raised overtime pay, which is something a Trump judge just struck down. But there's a lot of good things that they did, and they couldn't even sell the good things they did because they never even talk about the good things that they did. Nobody knows about the good things that they did. And the media does a horrible job talking about those things too. And, I've recently soured so hard on.
So all of the Democrats and all of the media couldn't talk about the good things they were doing. That is so alchemical. Occam's razor, the simplest answer is usually the most correct one. Maybe your policies are unpopular, but in their mind, it's inductive. They know that they're economically populists. They know that to be a fact, and so they have to try and conform reality into that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I mean, they have built-in reasons for why their policies don't work. It's always communists are always blaming the external world for not aligning to their vision of what the world looks like, right? They just have to reorder the world in order to make it fit their vision. So we can't talk about anything, but it's not our policies that are a problem. It's the world. It's not us.
Honestly, I think so. Kyle, let me take that back. Kyle's a straight man. The reason why his hair is blonde and he comes off as gay is because of how often he sucks his own dick. Only Kyle has all the answers. Everyone should just listen to Kyle, and then they'll win. Even though he already tried this with Cenk Uygur.
And the answer is removing your third rib. That's the fucking answer.
Even independent media now. I used to be so hopeful about independent media, thinking hey, there's some of us out here that are just telling the truth and giving people information and having fun with it and stuff. And then now, I'm sure you've seen, I've been on the warpath against Joe Rogan and types like him. Because
independent media is now tweeting Elon Musk saved freedom of speech. X is the freedom app. And behind the scenes, you're employed by the poly marketers.
Oh, X is the freedom app. How do we find out that Joe Biden wasn't running for re-election on X? How do we find out that there was an assassination attempt on Trump when CNN just said he fell on X? So this is why people don't believe what you're saying. You're living in a different reality. It's not just, they think everything is just for no reason because they're subjectivists, because they're postmodernists. Anything can be anything, and we just have to make that anything coming from our Gnostic lens.
Yes, and that's when they say before, they're just blaming immigrants and trans people. They're just blaming immigrants and trans people. Let me put the immigrants aside for a second and say trans people. Us saying, hey, we don't think that people should mutilate themselves, let alone mutilate children. But I don't even think anyone should be allowed to transition their quote unquote gender. But I don't God forbid we say that we shouldn't think that these people should be allowed to mutilate themselves in order to affirm their magical concept of a gender soul. And that we shouldn't reorganize all of society and material reality around the religious beliefs of a select few individuals. And that entire complex reason gets distilled down into them just saying, they just blame trans people for everything. Fuck you, Kyle. You
Patrick,
fucking...
Here's when we should let people transition their gender, okay? Are you ready?
When
we have a scientific, deductively logical definition of gender.
Oh, so never.
It's actual science.
All right, so never. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the problem. That's it right there.
I wanted to get you going with that one.
Oh, not so bad.
Or something,
Yes, it's the saddest thing I've ever seen.
It's genuinely. I think, I don't know how the media environment is going, because we're already seeing the media falling in line to Trump, right? So Washington Post, LA Times withholding endorsements of Kamala Harris. We know, for example, that I actually forget her name. There was a celebrity who was recently forced to make an apology after making anti-Trump comments. I don't remember her name, but it was this embarrassing, now that he's about to be in power, we should really shut up a little bit.
Pussycat Dolls.
Was it Chappell Roan or Charlie XCX?
I don't think Chappell Roan would apologize for that. At least I hope she wouldn't. I don't remember her name, but
we're showing our age here.
Maybe, yeah. Well, it was sad to see either way. You have that, and you have a Joe Scarborough apparently went to Mar-a-Lago the other day to suck up to. So I don't know how we're getting out of this, because it seems like legacy media was already captured, and independent media, I feel like there are literally 3 billionaires who have captured like a whole crescent, like a whole bite out of the entire space. Did you see that? I think Wired put it out. It was like bubbles of influence and power for independent media, people not associated with legacy, and the right was absolutely blowing the left out of the water. I mean, it was like 10-1. People like Joe Rogan, the Paul brothers, Elon Musk, because he's not technically a government employee, he's just like shadows are. The left wasn't even like visible on the chart. I don't know how you claw your way out of that. You know, like the organized material forces here seem kind of insurmountable.
The organized material forces. So this, okay, excellent. So, oh, we're being crazy, calling them communists. That's exactly how communists talk. We've already shown it. That's why this is fun to have this podcast, okay? We've shown this crazy rhetoric and how it leads to nothing. It's boring to listen to. They bore you to sleep so they can steal your dreams, okay? So when he says material forces, the word material comes from scientific Marxism, which just assumes that they are already correct, and then whatever they're saying is correct. It sounds like baby stuff because it is. So when he says material, that's him showing the other communist that he is using the right words. That's honestly a dog whistle. Can we agree the word material in this context is a dog whistle?
It's a Marx whistle is what it is. It's a Marx whistle. It's just absurd, though, because they refer to it as a science. And if you ever actually be like, hey, can you explain how it's a science? They'll just go, read Das Kapital, read the Communist Manifesto. They'll never actually tell you how it's a science, because Marx just says that it's science, because if you view the material conditions of the world, whether it be through identity groups or through rich and poor, all of this, then you'll be able to then ascertain what the arc of history is and where it's leading to and how to basically bring in the utopia. But there's no actual
science is replicable. You can replicate science.
It's like democracy. It's like gender. They just call it science, or it's like the science. Actually, do you think that's what the science means? It just means scientific Marxism? Might be.
The way that it's used, honestly, we're not even defining our words anymore, because we tried that with racism and they go, that's the dictionary definition of racism. That's not the real definition. It's like, wait a minute. Whoa. How is the dictionary definition not the real definition? And then they update the dictionary definition. They go, see, it's in the dictionary.
No, seriously. I remember, it just, my mind's on the science thing now. I remember when I was selling fireplaces this is back in like 2020, 2021. And I was kind of getting really wary of all the COVID stuff. And I thought it was strange how they were forcing people to get the vaccines and getting their jobs fired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I went to a house to measure for 2 gas inserts. And I made a brief comment about how some of the rhetoric around the vaccine seemed kind of weird. And the couple looked at me and in unison both went, well, we trust the science. I just looked at them and I had no idea about what communism or any of this. Yeah, I just looked at them and was like, something is wrong here. It was so creepy.
Yeah, well, I'm of the mindset now. Like, listen, I'm the guy who tried to go into the lion's den and talk some sense into Joe Rogan. I was on his podcast like 4 or 5 times, and I'm the guy who's been the one to like, let's hold their hand and walk them through it gently and explain it to them, and they'll get it. We have to have.
I really think this is coming from Destiny, like turning his back, and because so now they lost. He's like, we have to stop being nice. It's like, you guys haven't been nice. That's why there's a meme that they spread around of like, oh, they were mean to me, so I'm going to shave my head and be a Nazi. If you care about people so much, why are you so bad to them? And they want to not be around you.
I know. You love them.
You want to know what they are? They're political incels.
Yeah.
It's not everyone else's fault. It's your fault. That's why no one wants to fuck you. It's your fault.
And everyone else is a fascist, and everyone else is, ontologically evil. But yeah, no, they've been way too. That's what they always say. They're like, the Democrats are too nice and they have too much honor. And I'm just like, are you actually kidding me? How do you live in a world where
the whole Hitler rhetoric that we've been talking about for the past few weeks?
Faith that they will, and now I'm so black-pilled that I'm just on the warpath against all these charlatans, because that's what I think they are. I think they're charlatans. Even the ones who are not that political but dip their toe into the water and, oh, would you look at that? They support Trump. It's like, okay, if you're going to do that, then welcome to our world where our.
So this is a communist principle. This is essentially what reactionary means. Anyone that's against us, even a little bit, is our enemy. So they've been denying like the socialism and communism so much that they don't realize that they think they're coming up with a new idea right now, which is very communist to think you're coming up with a new fucking idea and it's the same thing over and over again. So they go right back to square one and they go, you know what? We should try being pieces of shit and super divisive and talking down to people. It's like, you've been criticized about doing that for a decade now. And there's a whole walk away campaign. We've been explicitly telling you that that's failing and that people don't like that. And then when they walk away, you go, yeah, you were never on our side anyway. It's like, no, we tried to be on your side. Many of us did.
But they blame it on two things, just like I said, right? They're communists, so they blame the external world. It's the world's fault. But every time you listen to these schmucks talk, they always say that it is an information problem.
Yeah.
If people were just presented with the correct information, then they would agree with every single thing that these freaking douchebags say. That's what they always say every single time, which is hilarious because it's projection. Because, I mean, listen to them talk. They're completely detached from like the thing is, they're talking about all of this. With these people, you're never ever able to get to the next level, to be like, why do all the tenets of the Democratic Party, with everything they're pushing in terms of Build Back Better, equity, why do they all match with like a fascistic environmental social governance movement that seeks to force behaviors and basically enslave humanity to get them to do what they want, that just so happens to match up with the fucking cosmology of an ancient esoteric cult faith? You're never going to be able to talk to these people about this. Yeah, exactly. So
people should realize that when we say communist, it's the same end point. It doesn't matter what you do in between.
Exactly. And so you're never going to be able to have an actual conversation with these people because they're never going to be able to look at that next level and next step to see what the ESG movement is. Or if they do, they'll be like, well, that's a good thing because we should make companies do better things and then people will be better as a result of the companies
telling you to do better things. How could you have a conversation with Kyle Kulinsky? He wants to verbally rape you until you go, okay.
I just want
our job is to keep it real with you guys. And you even see this with like you said, with MSNBC. Even they're now sort of like backing off of even the basic resistance liberal type shit. They look like they're going to be way worse than they even were
in 2016. You had like resist libs back then, but now I feel like no one's even, there aren't even people in the streets. It feels like everyone just quietly accepted it, like it was an inevitability.
Well, look,
there's not even people in the streets. I'm pretty sure the riots of 2020 weren't about Trump. It was a manufactured crisis about George Floyd. It was about racism. They've already forgot why they burned down the fucking country. That's what's so dangerous.
And that's what's funny is because they're not actually burning down the country for George Floyd, right? They're burning down the country because they just want endless revolution.
Bullshit. They burned down black businesses for black people, okay?
They really did. George Floyd is looking up at us from hell, and he's so happy. He's so happy that they burned down that little old black lady's shoe shop. I'm just joking. He's probably not in hell.
The good news is there's definitely
Jesus would accept George.
49% of the country voted for Kamala, like 48.5 or whatever it is. And it's like, there is an underlying dissatisfaction and hopelessness and anger over it. And it's the job of people like us to kind of harness that and remind people that the fight's never over. Because the fact of the matter is, Trump in the second term is going to do so many abysmal, horrific, terrible things. He's already making
He's always gonna. Like he wasn't already the fucking president, dude. I can't take it anymore.
Well, he was held in check by, it's, I just hate
You want to know
so
what
much.
It sounds like? It sounds like someone's in a cult and they've been chained to a radiator their entire life. And they're like, don't go out in that world. You can't handle it without me. Do you know what's going to happen to you out there?
It really does seem like that. It really, really does.
Horrible appointments that are neocons. So like the country is going to sour on him. It is going to happen. The question is, who's going to be there waiting to move us forward after that? Because what my fear is that I just hope we don't do that classic, like, just pendulum back and forth, and here, let's pick whatever slop Democrat we want, throw them out there, and, they'll be good enough. Even though
Gavin Newsom runs on a policy of, like, austerity after Trump runs up the debt, deploying the military around the country, deporting people, and Gavin Newsom steps in. He's like, time for some common sense governance or something.
Right, yeah. So it's our job to set the narrative.
Builds the homeless person furnace.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Are you in
It's their job to set the narrative. During COVID, if you played a video game, it said end racism in Madden in the end zone, okay?
Really? That's hilarious.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes! It said Black Lives Matter in the video game.
Do you know that when you type...
On Fenway Park, it said Black Lives Matter in the street.
when
which
you
used
type
to be
in
called Dudley Square. Then they changed it to Nubian Square, and then in
Nubian.
giant letters wrote Black
Nubian?
Lives Matter on the fucking pavement.
Nubian.
Okay.
Do you know that when you type in Black Lives Matter in the phone, it immediately capitalizes the B, the L, and the M?
Oh,
and puts
capitalizing the B in
colors?
black happened in, I think, 2014.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the entire movement. You can't even say, hey, yeah, I think Black Lives Matter. You have to be like, hey, yes, I support the organization and movement. You literally can't even just say that they matter.
Unfucking believable. It didn't control the narrative.
Yeah.
Are you in conscription person age range? Are you getting sent to Iran along with me? I still have 5 years that
When
they
does
can
it-
send me to
when does it
Iran.
end?
35. If you're already
I'm
signed up for
36,
the
baby.
Yeah, no
I'm
kidding.
36.
And looking great. All right. Well, I'll send you like letters from the front line. You know, I'll be in Tehran. You know, getting droned in the rubble of a basement, writing you a letter.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. But yeah, like some of the narratives that are coming out now just drive me absolutely crazy. Like, and I see too many people feeding into them, even people that should know better. Like the one, like blaming wokeness for Kamala's loss
Insane.
is literally just a right-wing bullshit trap that they set up for you that you're walking right into.
You're as far as I'm concerned, if you're doing that, you're like an enemy. You're not even like misguided. You're like actually on their team because there's no way you can believe that fairly after seeing Kamala Harris's campaign. It's
Their strategy is
I just
deny,
can't.
deny.
I can't.
Then if they're
can't.
faced with a fact of something happening, they go, well, it's not that bad. This has been a joke for 5 years now.
Kamala Harris, her voting record is like the most woke voting
The most
record.
left. It was voted the most, the
the
furthest
most-
left.
The most left. The entire Democratic Party is in bed with the fascistic ESG movement, whose all of their tenets are wokeness. It doesn't even come from the Democrats. It comes from a bunch of unelected sociopaths
Yes.
that live across the fucking ocean.
Yes.
So no, oh yeah, but no, they're not running on wokeness. Just because they're so dumb. It's like somebody is saying they're going to invite you out to dinner and they're planning on raping you, but they don't tell you they're going to rape you beforehand. It's like he wasn't going to rape me. He didn't run on this date on raping me. He
No,
was
it's
just going
actually
to do it
worse than
without
that. It's
fucking
actually
telling
someone
me.
that's been raping you for years, and then they didn't
Yes.
rape you in the last 100 days, and they want a fucking pat on the head.
That is what it is. Yes, that's a more accurate. Yes, exactly. I just can't take their level of delusion and lying here. It's too
Well,
much.
because it's being implemented on society because they've been controlling the fucking narrative.
Yeah, and every single institution.
It's insane.
That's what I'm saying. My issue with it is that it's literally empirically not true. Like I had the label and the moniker of like, yeah, Kyle, he's a lefty, but he's also kind of anti-woke. That's how people thought of me. Well, here is that same person who's viewed as anti-woke telling you it is factually the case that this campaign, her loss had nothing to do with wokeness. I tweeted this the other day. And blew the
anti-woke.
fuck up, but she didn't mention.
But do you
He
see
is
how
not
he
anti-woke.
focuses on her campaign?
Yeah.
Ignore everything this is what a sociopath does.
Yes.
That's what an abusive narcissist does. Forget everything I've ever said. This is what I'm saying now. That's someone who's not
Yes.
accountable for anything they've ever fucking said.
And he's also all he does is provide cover for the more insane woke aspects of his entire political party.
Exactly. That's why he
Yeah,
says
he's
he's anti-woke. Because he's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
look, I'm
He's
one of the good ones. I'm pushing back against that crazy shit. But he's just ignoring it. He's not pushing back against it. He's just ignoring it.
Yeah, exactly. I much prefer like a more insane woke person that's just at least out in the open with how crazy they are, as opposed to this little fucking gilded pussy that just lies and hides behind crystal.
The previous episodes are about very outward, very brazen communism, and then we see the double speak with, what do you mean they're communist? What do you mean they're
he's
communist?
a progressive. He's Vaush is a libertarian socialist. That's not a communist.
That's a meme. That's not a thing. That's why, dude, do you remember for like 3 months I had libertarian communist in my profile with a hammer sickle? And it drove them crazy. They're like, there's no such thing as a libertarian communist. And you want to know what I said? You need to read theory. It drove them fucking crazy.
Mention race. She didn't mention gender. She didn't mention trans people. She didn't mention pronouns, Latinx, cancel culture, political correctness. She stressed repeatedly that she was going to represent all Americans. She would deflect when somebody brought up race to her. She would say,
I know, but Kyle, the party supported those things. They're voting for the party.
And this is, and
you want to know what drives them crazy? We're voting for Trump because Trump actually has influence over the party. Whoever you vote for, it's a talking head. It's corporate speak with the Democrat. You're voting for the Democrat party, as they clearly state with blue no matter who.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, right? But it's just so funny because everything about Kamala was woke, and then it became slightly less in vogue to be overtly woke. So she's just not going to talk about it out in the open. Meanwhile, if you look at all their policies they're trying to get through, they're all incredibly woke. So it's like he thinks that people are dumb, and if Kamala doesn't talk about it, that just means it doesn't exist in his mind. He's absurd.
Well, yeah, actually, when you say he thinks people are dumb, to take it a step further, it's because he thinks he has all of the answers. He's very Gnostic.
Yes.
He has. People
dude.
just need to listen to him, and then they'll know. But all they're doing is rhetorical. It's just sophistry. They're not explicitly engaging in material reality about what should happen, about what has happened. They're just talking about mythological possibilities of what could happen and what's going to happen.
And look at this. We've commented on 1 second shy of 14 minutes. And what have they actually said or achieved or not done? Nothing. Nothing has happened.
They're just spewing hatred.
They're just spewing nonsense, and then we're just
it's hatred.
We're just mocking
There's
them.
hate in their voices and condescension.
Yeah. Well, they are communists, so they want to kill their political enemies and put the rest in gulags to get them to do what they want. So that makes sense.
Say, forget race, I'm going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the border. She ran on freedom and patriotism. She had the USA chance at the DNC. And then if you look at what she actually ran on, it was $6,000 child tax credit and banning price gouging and reducing medical debt and stuff like that.
There's no limiting principles. When Trump says something, they go, here's what he really means. When Kamala has done the exact opposite of what she's saying, they go, but look at what she's saying.
I know. It's like, I don't understand. He's like, I don't get it. All Kamala did the entire election was lie about everything she was going to do. I don't understand it. Why did everybody
really
hate that she lied?
unironically is what he's saying.
What? Why do they hate that she lied? Why wouldn't they vote for the smart black woman? Why? Suck on your vape, Kyle, you son of a bitch.
So don't give in to a right-wing bullshit narrative that basically, because this is what Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to say, look, everything's okay. If we just throw trans people under the bus and throw immigrants more under the bus, then maybe we'll win. That's how they're thinking. And we need to be there to be like...
So you can identify something as a communist strategy when it's completely polarizing and it specifically operates on otherizing people. So, hey, that sounds right-wing. You're not making a truth claim. You're just saying that's right-wing, which is implicitly implying that it's incorrect, but you're not outwardly stating how it's incorrect. So that's how you know it's something as a communist strategy, when it's like, that's a right-wing talking point. Well, it looks like reality has a right-wing persuasion to it.
A bias, yeah. And it's funny because they say throw trans people under the bus. Throwing trans people under the bus should mean getting them the mental help that they need, and not trying to mutilate them based on affirming a gender soul.
The mental help they need is to get out of the cult.
Yeah.
And that's why they attack people like Maya and people like they hate detransitioners. Fucking... Oh my God.
Well,
I understand disagreeing with or not liking a detransitioner. I don't understand like hating a detransitioner for detransitioning and saying things you don't agree with.
Well, think about it, right? Like what happens when you have look at the Scientologists. How do the Scientologists treat the people that leave their religion? So these assholes are going to treat the detransitioners the exact same way because it's literally the exact same mechanism.
Why don't you actually believe in something and argue for it and be relentless about it and also have fun with it and be controversial and charismatic in the process, and then you'll win.
They literally don't understand it. It's like...
Yeah, the issue with the left is that they're not fucking relentless enough. Like the fucking Columbia protests for Palestine weren't relentless enough when they took over the fucking campus or when they took over fucking police stations and burned them to the fucking ground. They're just not relentless enough.
I know, right? Yeah, no, they have no follow through at all. It's just absurd though, because a lot of it's so fake and like, you know, I mean, it's like NGOs that are orchestrating all of these protests. So they just literally bust people in by the hundreds to get them to bust. But it's absurd the way they view the left is not how the left actually operates. But they have to do that because they have to lie and make it look like the right does that.
How can they view how it operates when they are not actually living in the reality that exists that's out of their control? I mean, that's a property of cluster B where you need everything to be in your control. And so how you think of it, you want that to manifest in reality because you cannot just take the fact in that there's things out of your control. They're control freaks.
Like the consultancy plague. And it used to be like a both sides kind of thing, because I remember that there was a lot of messaging conflict in the other people running alongside Trump in the 2016 primaries, where they were after two, terms of Obama kind of like blowing down the house. They knew it was their time, or at least they had a chance at it. And people were like experimenting. How progressive should we be? More or less pro-immigrant? Trump won because he didn't listen or care. He just did his thing. He lied all the time.
Does the right say how right-wing should we be? See how everything's optics with them? How progressive should we be? Well, how progressive do you want to be, you fucking commie?
I know. Well, yeah. I mean, everything is measured. Everything is fake. Everything is fake about them.
But it was always like, you can tell that he's saying what's on his mind. I don't think he could even listen to a consultant if one was like paid to explain this to him. Like, he probably was given consultancy advice and then just ignored it for the most part. So I don't know what because it's like a fundamental problem with how liberals understand the world, which is they see it through this like policy wonkery, right? Well, gay marriage is a good thing to run in favor of, but only after it tips to 51% of approval, you know? And that's not how you build a political consensus. Back in 2016, during Trump's first term, a significant number of Americans, even through all the build the wall rhetoric, were in favor of more immigration. That only turned when Biden became president, because as soon as he was the one dealing with the border, Democrats didn't think it was worthwhile pushing back against anti-immigrant rhetoric now that they were the ones doing the anti-immigrant policy. And for that reason, now anti-immigrant sentiment has skyrocketed across every demographic. You have to push for the point to be popular, not you have to wait for it to be popular to push for it. And they just don't get it.
Yeah, and here's the other thing.
They don't get it. Let's listen to a guy that gets it right now, okay?
I feel better now. Let's
listen to a guy that gets it right now,
The left
okay?
community online, particularly the LGBT community, is cancerous as fuck. If you're not an idiot, you will agree with me on this. If you have any fucking experience with online like LGBT or leftist discourse, you know it's cancerous as fuck. You understand this. People are hyper fragile. There's a ton of mental illness. And you can't convert these people. They're not reasonable. They have to be excised from the left. And it's because it's coming from dumb fucks who are gay. This person says they're gay as hell? Because it's coming from the gays. It's woke now. These people are less than human to me. I have no respect for these people. These people are fucking disgusting. You don't need to be a psychologist to see that a large portion of the broader fucking like woke-tard, cancel culture, idpo left is predicated on shared mental illness. This is particularly prominent in the trans community. If you disagree with me on this, you're wrong. I know it sounds yikesy. It happens anyway. Pretty much every time I deal with dipshits from the left that's trans girls, that I notice there's a vastly disproportionate amount of dumb fuck lefty takes in my feed coming from trans people. I don't know. Most of the time when a wildly fucking irrational lefty comes in to make bad faith arguments against me, it's a trans person. That is a fact. If all of these dumb fucks recognize that I despise them and think they're every bit as detrimental to the left as Nazis are, I am doing good. I want these people to know that they're my enemy. I fucking hate them. I really do despise them.
But they're not your enemy.
Oh, no. Yes, they are. They hurt me and they hurt you. Because every time some dumb fuck trans girl on Twitter who's acting out mental illness, whining, calling people like me transphobic because I disagree with them, they're hurting the left. No, these people are ill. These people are a cancer. They're subhuman. I don't care.
Question. Don't do that kind of shit. That doesn't help.
Yeah, I'm edgy. I don't give a fuck.
It's not just you know that's not just being edgy.
Damn right. Yeah, it's edgy as shit.
No, making a reference to the Jewish question about how like there's like a trans conspiracy or whatever. Like that's not.
So the only thing that got me a strike on my channel was playing that video.
What kind of asshole would ever wear the haircut that Vaush had in that video?
Oh
disgusting,
my God, dude.
Terrible.
I would
probably only
never
the biggest
have a podcast
douchebag
with anyone that would have that haircut.
Yeah, definitely not some allegedly straight guy. But I do love that he said that. Like, it's just so that's there.
But really think to yourself that Kyle Kulinsky thinks he's making moves, and this is who he's talking to. You can't talk to anyone more important than this. We're not even going to talk about Vaush's cartoon CP porn, okay?
Yeah,
That's who Kyle Kulinsky's talking to. Kyle Kulinsky thinks he's that important and that knowledgeable, and he's stuck talking to this fucking guy.
Especially because Vaush will constantly say the right-wingers are all the pedophiles and rapists, and yet he literally has cartoon
And
CP.
transphobic, did you hear what he just said? I've never heard anyone, not on the right, not on the left, in my life, say something that transphobic.
But it's so funny because what Vaush said,
He nailed it.
That is the most truthful thing this douchebag has ever said in his entire life. In front of a camera.
That they were the ones doing the anti-immigrant policy. And for that reason, now anti-immigrant sentiment has skyrocketed across every demographic. You have to push for the point to be popular, not you have to wait for it to be popular to push for it. And they just don't get it.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Donald Trump is without a doubt, in my lifetime, the most unhinged, arrogant political figure I've ever seen in my life. if you disagree with him 1%, he tries to destroy you. And I've heard nobody say in the aftermath of this election.
The left doesn't do that. Donald Trump does that. If you disagree with
correct.
him. If you disagree with Trump on leaving abortion up to the states, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like his own base disagrees with that or anything, right?
I know. And the left is so, it's funny because they demand ideological purity, but they're also like opportunists. So it's more so that they're demanding purity in the pursuit of power, and anything that negates it or gets in the way of it, that's when they go after you. Because really, they don't really have any principles. It's just about consolidating power.
Yep.
They just pretend to have principles.
Election,
Cowards.
Maybe Democrats should be more divisive. Maybe they should be more arrogant. Maybe they should be more cocky and self-assured. Maybe they should be more aggressive. I mean, this guy won literally talking about Arnold Palmer's cock and Hannibal Lecter and immigrants are eating cats and dogs.
Classic strategy.
You had a speaker at his rally at MSG.
Yeah, and you lost to him. You lost everything, by the way.
You
lost in all the ways you could have ever possibly lost.
It's also hilarious that they think that the only reason illegal immigration is not popular is because of the narratives that the Republicans and their agents in the media laid. As if unfettered illegal immigration, where we're unable to see who's coming across the border or accounting for them, as if that's not just a problem in and of itself without media manipulation. It's so, oh my gosh. I mean, I guess there is some truth to what they're saying, because the left literally, I mean, so many on the left literally, not only did they not see it as a problem, but they actually think it's a good thing because they want to get rid of borders. So I guess the power of propaganda is pretty persuasive, I suppose.
Well, I just don't understand how they rectify. We need to increase the minimum wage, but that's not going to make things more expensive. But if we get rid of the slave labor from illegal immigrants, then the economy can't run. According to the Democrats, we need to pay people below the minimum wage in order for society to run.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a built-in contradiction to what they say, and it makes no freaking sense.
A lot of people miss this one, but this to me was the biggest one. This guy said the whole party, talking about Democrats, are degenerates, Jew haters, and lowlives. If a Democrat said something similar about the Republican Party, it would be, 5-alarm fire, everybody would melt down, everybody would be talking about it 24/7, Fox News would have it on a loop. But they say it, and they get away with it. They set the narrative by being relentless, by being extreme, by not being afraid of being divisive. So I would say be more divisive. Because at first I was upset at the results, but then after that, the next day, I felt really reinvigorated. Like, this, man, I don't need to pretend to hold anybody's hand and walk through, let me explain it to you, here's why you're wrong. No.
All they do is call Putin Hitler, who Donald Trump loves, and then Donald Trump is also Hitler. But they're never divisive. There's nothing that they do that is They're trying to jail their political enemies through political persecution, but that's not divisive. They're cutting the dicks and tits off of fucking children, but that's not divisive.
Patrick, they're trying to get away from the divisive rhetoric of Make America Great Again to the more unifying rhetoric of Black Lives Matter, and if you say all lives matter, you're divisive.
I can never have enough pillows to scream into.
That now I'm going to be the asshole. I'm going to be the one to berate you. I'm going to be the one to tell you exactly
you're
how
going
you
to
are.
go down to the grocery store on January 21st and talk about Trump tariff, Trump inflation. You're going to have the bacon and the eggs and stuff, and this cost me $83 because you got it from Whole Foods. You're going to start Twitter discourse over it. The Trumpflation. No, I mean, I completely agree with regard to being more divisive. At the very least, what a lot of Democrats seem to keep forgetting is that their base hates Trump, despises Trump.
Totally.
But they don't talk like it. Joe Biden is sitting there in the White House, warmly welcoming Trump into his second term of office after calling him a fascist. You're
because they didn't mean it, because it was just hollow propagandistic rhetoric. Yes, right. They didn't really believe in anything they were saying. Imagine welcoming Hitler and being like, oh, well, hey, Hitler, you won fair and square, buddy. Come on in.
You ran a good campaign, man. Welcome.
You ran a good campaign, man.
It was really good. Really good.
Really showing how much you believe that. Across the aisle, Democrats are unwilling to it's considered divisive for someone like, I don't know, J.B. Pritzker to say something like, well, I'm the better billionaire. That's fighting words from a Democrat. He's not even really a billionaire. He lies on his tax returns. That's aggressive rhetoric coming from them. And meanwhile, the Republican side, you have the everyone else is a degenerate and Jew hater. I think that I don't know. It's Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren style consultancy, I guess, where people took the wrong lessons from their campaigns and decided they weren't listening enough to the people who only talk to other like upper middle class white, New York or Washington D.C. Like, you know these people, right? Like they don't talk to normal people at all. I don't think Republican politicians talk to normal people. I do think they look at the comment sections under their tweets, YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever, and they do respond to public sentiment in that context. But I don't think
this is how removed they are from the quote unquote working class. Yeah, Republicans don't talk to normal people. It's just that like Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro or Charlie Kirk go to college campuses and have open discussions about things. They don't really go and talk to it. Who is stopping the left from doing that? Having open conversations and challenge me in a Q&A.
Exactly. But I mean, they don't, it's funny because they don't need, it's like they don't need to have open discussions because they control everything. I don't think the left particularly wants to change hearts and minds. I don't think they're interested.
Really?
The Democrat consultancy class really goes out there and like deals with or reconciles the fact that the average person is really angry right now.
Yeah, and no, those DNC consultants, they're like literally paid losers. Like they just have opinions about things and they tell Democrats to run on those things. They fail and then they fail again and then they fail again and they fail up and up and up and up and up.
Like you guys,
and it's like literally a professional wrongness industry. But now what's interesting is you're seeing people who you wouldn't even necessarily expect. Some of them are coming out saying, yeah, maybe Bernie had a point. David Brooks, the New York Times writer, who's a conservative, said, yeah, maybe Bernie was right.
Too little, too late.
Too little, too late. But it's good to have some of these people who were total vehement enemies now on the record. You have James Carville said, maybe Bernie was right. Maybe we should have ran on like increasing the minimum wage and never shut up about that. Jen Psaki said in so many words that the Pod Save Bros, some of the Pod Save Bros effectively said that. So I think
they were going after Biden really hard after Kamala lost with the internal, the 400 electoral vote loss. That was,
Yep.
Yeah. It's impossible to defend this in retrospect. I thought that Biden.
There's nothing more communist than putting your political party in a position to defend something, to defend the indefensible. The most popular president in history, why would they be going so hard at him if he was doing such a good job when he was making the country so good? You just don't realize how good he was making the country for you. That's your problem. I don't know why that messaging didn't work. I
know. It's just funny because I think a lot of the times because they, people of this political persuasion, like, right, everyone is in charge. Like, they're in charge of basically all of society. So they're used to a certain amount of control that doesn't actually require them to think logically or to try to convince people because they control the mechanisms of society. So they just tell you what's real and then you accept what's real.
That's what makes them not human. They're not used to having, they're like hot bitches.
Yeah,
that never actually had to really try. It's just already done. All the doors are already open for them, and they don't know what it's like. If your pretty privilege was taken away, how would you court a man, for example, as a hot woman if your looks weren't there?
Yeah, and and plus their entire religion, their whole political theology is based on the idea of becoming God. So it's very disheartening for them once they realize that they actually aren't gods yet.
They get a god harder.
And was just like arrogant or self-centered or getting like bad advice. If they were holding on to internal polls suggesting they were going to lose that badly, it's borderline like malicious incompetence. It's insane.
Yeah, but now Biden, I'm sure Biden in his heart of heart thinks I would have won. Like, I guarantee you that's what he thinks because he's got a massive ego the size of Trump's ego. And I bet the staffers around Biden, the little sycophants, feel like, no, my guy would have won. Because in their mind, think about it from their perspective. In 2020, they were counted out during the primary. Then they ended up winning. Granted, it was because of a bunch of fury and all the centrists backed out and screwed Bernie, all that stuff.
The centrist Voltron they formed,
yeah, they pulled it off, right? They feel like, okay, we pulled it off. Then for the general election, they thought, nah, you're not going to beat Trump. They beat Trump. Then in 2022, it was red wave is going to happen, and there wasn't a red wave. So Biden thinks he's hot shit. Biden thinks the reason that he's winning is because he's him and he's just so great. And so from his perspective, he feels like, oh, you guys screwed me and now you got what you deserve. That's why people were pointing out like all the super happy pictures of Biden when he was meeting with Trump and like the speech he gave after Trump won where he had a grin that was ear to ear. It's like from a selfish perspective, he probably feels like, yeah, I would have won.
Yeah, it just kept me. Yeah. It's really as without COVID, like Trump almost certainly would have won in 2020. And I feel like maybe that would have been
without COVID, Trump probably would have won in 2020. Thank God COVID happened mysteriously, miraculously, or else Trump probably would have won. And the reason why Trump didn't win, I don't think it had so much to do with how he handled COVID. I think it was more so probably people were afraid.
Yeah.
Because of all the violence happening.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the intended side effects, consequences of the violence, right? If this continues, we will burn everything to the ground. And it doesn't matter what color you are. Everyone's getting burned. Everybody.
In a better timeline, because they wouldn't have had 4 years to consolidate behind like the Heritage Foundation, and it would have just been a continuation of Trump blustering his way through the presidency with no real plan or aim or direction, whereas now we have like a militant and coordinated effort to dismantle.
I love how they have no plan or direction, so Trump also must have no plan or direction.
Yeah, it's amazing. They just project everything onto their political opponent. I mean, he definitely has plans and directions. Is he going to follow through on everything he said?
Right. It's a regular politician.
Yeah.
Dismantle our institutions as like revenge for having audaciously kicked them out in 2020. It's rough.
Ideological now. It's ideological now. Whereas it was sort of haphazard the first time around. This time it's like his whole campaign was revenge, retribution, vengeance, anger. I'm going after them. And I think people sort of in their minds felt like, oh, when he says that, he means he's going after like the bad guys in the establishment that are keeping prices high or something. No, he means he's going after everybody who correctly charged him with a crime. If I was Jack Smith or Letitia James or Fonnie Willis, I'd be out this bitch because he's going to, Lord only knows what he's going to do, right? Like I wouldn't put it by him to actually do some genuine martial law type stuff because he was reeled in the last time around. He wanted to deploy the U.S. military.
Yeah, remember when he authoritatively called the National Guard to start mowing people down? Remember when he did that during the protest?
Well, he's just about to say that he was going to use the National Guard during the George Floyd protests and riots to shoot people in the knees. He's about to say that right now.
Okay, but it's about what he heard. Someone said Trump said shoot him in the leg. That's as far as we get. The left was burning down police precincts.
I know.
They were murdering people. They want you to think about, it's the same thing Destiny does with January 6th. They want you to think about what could have happened, what might happen. And not focus on what they did and what they're doing. That is narcissistic and sociopathic. Don't focus on what I'm doing. Focus on what's going to happen if I'm not here to do it to you.
And the left was doing that as mainstream Democrat politicians, where we're calling for people to get out into the street and get angrier and be more upset. They were actually calling. They weren't calling for violence, but they were like stoking,
putting them in the position to commit violence. And then once the violence happened, they said, "Well, that's not Black Lives Matter, the organization. That's Black Lives Matter, the movement." Meanwhile. MAGA is only a movement and not an organization, and everything was the fault of the movement.
Yeah, correct. Well,
during the George Floyd protests and riot.
Wait, what'd you say?
I would just say there's a double standard, which goes back to Herbert Marcuse. The left can do what they want because they're the revolutionary force, whereas the right, they're the oppressors, so they're held to a different standard.
Everything they do is justified.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't we just shoot the protesters in the leg? Let's invoke the Insurrection Act. And it took the more reasonable generals around him to be like, we're not doing that. This time he doesn't have anybody. He's got Michael Flynn around him, who's like a QAnon freak. He's got Mike Huckabee, who's like an end times person. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, there are no adults in the room now. It's literally, it's and like Elon following her around everywhere. It seems like it's basically just like the dudes hanging out. There's no institution around it. They're just going to be getting unhit. I don't want to do the cringe. Oh, it's the Kim dynasty or whatever. Here's a dictatorship to compare it to. And if for no other reason than because I feel like even within dictatorships, there's kind of norms and backings to regulate behavior. There's at least expected practices. In this case, I don't even know if there's a historical comparison to this because
that is how you know you are dealing. So he's like, okay, scientific Marxism, the movement of history. How do I compare this historically? It's just look at what's happening and live in reality, and you'll probably have a good opportunity to analyze what's happening.
Exactly. But he can't do that, though, because his mind is trained to look through a particular lens.
It's the movement of history.
Historical.
We've already compared it to Hitler. We've already called them racist. We've already done the race wars. What else can we do? Listen? Listen to what they're saying and steelman their arguments and engage with them in the liberal free marketplace of ideas?
What they're saying, the only instance in which what the opposite side is saying, the only time it matters is how they can take what they're saying and then manipulate it towards their own ends. That's all that matters. All that matters.
Forces that have allowed this much power to be concentrated into the hands of people this incompetent. I don't know. The only thing I can really think of maybe is Venezuela after after the nationalization of the oil industry, and then a bunch of like cronies and family members got promoted to try to ensure their loyalty, and everything fell apart. I don't know what a good comparison would be, but countries never really, it never turns out well after it happens.
Yeah.
So,
and look at the Supreme Court too. Like the Supreme Court said, oh yeah, you have immunity for anything that can be remotely conceived of as an official act, right? And it's like it takes like a second grader to figure out the problem with that. Of course, you can make a stretch of an argument for anything being an official act. So what now?
The left is so used to bastardizing language that they're projecting like, well, yeah, but you could just make anything up. And it's like, well, you shouldn't. A normal person wouldn't think that way. They're so used to being able to concoct and contort situations and control language where it's like, yeah, but you can just say it's whatever. It's like, well, not in a polite, civilized, developed society. No, words actually mean something, but words already mean nothing to Kyle Kulinsky. So he was like, yeah, you can just say anything's official. No, you can't. Well, you can, and you people try to. And they're afraid that he's going to do what they want to do to us.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so funny is when they say that the right controls the narrative, when not only do they control the narrative, the left, but they control the language. And so the right has to like undo the language game.
And operate within their language.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like what you said about
Trump.
Sex is
Trump said he's like, we're gonna make sure that sex is assigned at birth or whatever. And it's like, well, it's observed at birth,
It's
Trump.
observed.
You're accidentally using their own language.
Right? As long as he does something and allegedly in good faith in his own mind, he thinks it's for the better of the country, it's an official act, then it's okay. Well, then there you go. You open up the door to all sorts of revenge and retribution. The fact of the matter is he was charged with crimes because he committed crimes, and the people he wants to charge with crimes did not commit crimes. And so here we are. It's classic authoritarianism.
we do. The one thing that I'm looking forward to, I guess, is that because I think the worst case scenario would be if the Trump administration was evil, but competent enough to keep the framework held together so that all the bad stuff they do, they can kind of control the narrative and make people agree with them. So, persecuted journalists flee the country. Oh, they were traitors. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, they have to crack down on Trump criticism because it would get them like sued by the government. Oh, well, that's just him going after fake news.
He was president for 4 years.
My hope is that
I can't believe this is so effective where he was already president and these things didn't happen. And so I feel like that's where a lot of people fell off because
and once again, I want him I don't want him to do those things as a journalist but I wish he was as extreme as these retards make him out to be. I wish he was actually going to get rid of the Department of Education instead of trying to reform.
I know, but he has limiting principles. I wish he would punish the political enemies that want me dead. Yes, it's a very human feeling to have, but we can't. But we can have the feeling. We can separate the feeling from the reality of the effect of what we want done. Right?
Yeah.
But we can't,
sometimes,
but it
depending
would be
on
great.
my mood.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sheer incompetence of the administration, and God only knows what the tariffs are going to do to the country, is going to lead to an almost immediate economic downturn, and that will create, again, as it did, at the end of his first term when COVID hit, an opportunity to refocus the American people on what's really wrong with the country, because the deportations will not make this country better. The tariffs will not make this country better. None of these policies will improve the lives of people. And for that reason, there will always be an opportunity to proselytize on the back of their, incompetence. I guess it's really a matter of whether we take the right direction, or, as you pointed out, with independent media kind of getting captured, like, is every American going to wake up and TV news, talk radio, their internet podcast, their shows, Logan Paul, whatever, are all going to tell them, yeah, the reason why the economy's down is because there aren't enough tariffs, actually. And we just never learn.
Yeah. And look, this is why I've been saying I really want Jon Stewart to run in 2028, because he's controversial, he's charismatic, and I think he has a much better sense of who the real enemies are. The immigrants are not.
There's nothing more communist than instead of having your own unique idea, you go, how do we have our version of Trump?
Yeah.
We need the
exactly.
left-wing version of Joe Rogan. We need the left-wing version of Trump. And it's like, create your own thing,
they can't.
you filthy communist.
Yeah, evil communism cannot create anything new. I love how he said Jon Stewart is controversial. What? He's the
He
host
used to
of
be. He used to be like
Yeah, for like a
15
minute,
years ago
kinda.
when he went on Tucker Carlson and was like, you're ruining the country.
Yeah, but it's almost like he's kind of, you know what he has? He has like the sort of punk rock vibe of like Rage Against the Machine, where when it was like politically, when it was socially advantageous in a rising social movement to stand against like traditional values and stuff like that, when it was cool and it was easy, people would do it. But now those people are just the machine that they were raging against before in the
leftists
past.
are boomers. A boomer
Yes,
now just means you're on the left. They do not understand how human beings interact and why things are the way that they are. They are boomers, all of them.
They're not the enemy. Trans people are not the enemy, and people have truly been convinced, like, hey, this is why your life sucks, because of these groups of people getting preferential treatment, taking your jobs, keeping your wages low. And it's like, no, the real reason your life sucks is because of billionaires and because of big money donors who have bought this government, and then the government represents them. It gives them tax breaks, gives them subsidies, and it screws you over. It doesn't raise your wages. It doesn't give you a union. It doesn't give you health care. And you need somebody who can really drive that message home and flip the narrative, because until we can...
Wages, union, healthcare, okay? All of the people that they're like, oh, there's no socialists, no communists, this is what they are advocating for as a step closer to communism and socialism. Pay us more money, let us collectively bargain so we can absolutely drain the capitalist of all of their money and give us as much money as humanly possible, and then take care of us for free, is the communist platform. Look at the ACP. Yeah. How much do you want to bet that they would disagree with anything that Kyle Kulinsky just said?
Yeah. No, he's speaking their language here, man. He's speaking old school, tanky communist right now.
Well, now it's working class. It's class war.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like old school. Yeah.
So now, so they've destabilized the country enough with the identity politics. Now that's outlived its usefulness. Just like feminism did, just like xenophobia did, just like black people did. All of them outlive their usefulness and they move on to the next thing. That's a sign of communism.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, correct. As soon as what is it? Hegel? What is it? I can't remember the exact quote, but it's basically about how like history essentially uses people and then discards them.
Yeah. We're just doing what history does. This is what they do. When they're violent against you, it's because you would have been violent against them. It's a post hoc rationalization where we're only hey, you guys set the rules, we didn't. That's literally how they're talking right now. Hey, we're just playing with your rules. No.
Yes.
That's your perception of our rules to justify your toxic behavior.
And I've fallen prey to this kind of thinking before, where like I'm doing something and then I think like the other person is going to do it. So then I project that onto them. And then as I'm doing it, I'm like, I'm only doing this because this person is going to do this to me when that person wasn't intending on doing that to me anyways. That is like communist politics in a nutshell. You know, they want to kill you before you kill them, even though they're the ones that are trying to take away your guns.
Instead of helping someone to not feel that way, they really utilize those people to go on the street and put their bodies on the line. Yeah. The same people that were like these neocons, how about they go over there and fight those wars? That's what they do with protesters on the streets of their own country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what the communist is just. The communist is just what would I say the word is? They're just jealous and envious of the power of the people that they claim to hate have. That's all they are.
Can break that Trump narrative of immigrants are the problem and trans people are the problem, then we're never really going to get through. The problem is, again, Democrats, they're technocratic status quo managers. So they say like, here's my list of policies and hopefully this helps. And it's like, even if those policies are good and correct, which many of them are, we're people. We need a story. We need a narrative. We need to be like the protagonist in this thing. And
there has to be a narrative of good and evil. And we're supposed to coexist with these people in the fucking country, by the way.
I know. And also just listen to what he keeps saying. Oh, trans people are the problem. Oh, they're saying trans people. Like, just think about nobody. There are people that say trans people are the problem. There are. But if you actually listen to the argument behind,
there's no depth to what he's saying.
There's nothing. So him doing these are the people that put people who believe they are trans in the most danger by using them as a political shield. But they'll accuse you of doing the exact same thing. Just like they'll accuse you of being obsessed with kids' genitals because you don't want their dicks and balls and tits cut off. So frustrating. Oh my God.
Person who we want as our leader, we need to feel like they're a protagonist in this thing. You can't be a technocrat anymore. We are past the age of technocracy. We're past the age of professionalism and polished politicians who are on script. Now we need somebody who's really going to go out there and say, look, here's why the system sucks. The system sucks because of these big money donors, and I'm going to fight for you, and we're going to take on these big money donors.
The big money donors, you say?
And also, he's just we are literally in the age of technocracy. That is what our age is going to be for a long time. I know he's saying what they should say, but I'm sorry, Kyle. You are the party of the technocrats. I'm really, really sorry. The unelected bureaucrats that make all of our choices for us.
According to Forbes, 83 billionaires supported Harris and 52 billionaires supported Trump. According to Forbes, which is fucking very left.
Yes, well now, yes, but also listen to what he's saying though. He's trying to hold the Democratic Party to task, right? So he's trying to offer critiques to the Democratic Party that they should not be in league with these billionaires, of course. But it's all empty, hollow rhetoric that means nothing. He's full of it, but that's what he's trying to say.
I know, but they're always like the donor class. It's like, well, that's the Democrats. It's worse. It's worse with the Democrats than it is with Republicans. But they always try to make the Republicans seem like they're the party of the billionaire class. Factually incorrect.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
We're going to make sure they don't have an iron grip on the country anymore. And it's that narrative is so important. And even with the best of the people we would think on the Democratic side for the next election, Gavin Newsom doesn't do class war politics, right? He doesn't do that.
He doesn't do class war politics. Class war. Is there a historical backing behind that? They love to invoke Trump, but not his actual words that he said. But what about the underlying philosophy,
right,
of Hitler? Class war is specifically Marxist. And before anyone would accuse me of calling everything communist, when Xi Jinping came here, Gavin Newsom cleaned up the fucking homeless encampments. Finally,
I know. And it's just so funny, because
literally cleaning up for a communist. Imagine if Putin came here and they cleaned up a fucking area.
It's just hilarious because everything they say is just drenched in Marxian, Hegelian dialect. Everything they say is drenched in it. But you can't point it out and you can't call them what they are because they code everything in hidden language. They don't actually reference where the thing that they're saying comes from, which allows them to act unimpeded in the world. And you're not able to call them what they are, which is communist.
But class war specifically... How can you say that Trump was being divisive when a foundational principle that you have, even though you have barely any principles, your one principle is to cause division to gain power?
Yeah.
Class war. Why do you want class war? How is that helping them? So they're going to have to do what in order to win this?
Strap a couple of proletariat members to the front of the armament.
Right, dude, just say proletariat. Stop being a bitch. Just come out and fucking say it.
Just fucking say it, man.
He's the same guy. He's exactly the same guy. People keep doing. They say it with Gavin Newsom. They say it with Pete Buttigieg. There are so many people who are. I mean, I guess they would be good politicians in the sense that they're somewhat charismatic and they'd be good administrators of the status quo. But fundamentally, they're all the exact same guy. There is so little variety in the people lined up on the Democrat side, and it's because all of them are kowtowing to the exact same, not only monetary incentives, but social pressures. Whereas you have this huge range within the Republican Party, just rhetorically speaking. Donald Trump is out in his own. Nobody's really comparable to him in their party. But within it, you have people like Joe Rogan, who's more influential on his own than basically any other.
Is he a part of the party? They're so mad
I love
that Trump talked to Joe Rogan. They're so
furious.
Fucking mad about it, dude.
They're so mad. And it's hilarious, too, because Joe Rogan, he's if Joe Rogan had his druthers, he would prefer a Green Party, hippie candidate. He's Joe Rogan's a hippie shitlib.
He had to leave California and go to Texas.
I know. But he's a hippie shitlib that ended up hanging out with a bunch of dissident right figures and was I really don't like how all of this power is coalescing on the left. So then it just automatically put him on the right, even though Rogan is literally a hippie that just wants to do DMT and eat elk meat.
This is Marxist. That's being a reactionary. If you say anything to go against the revolution, you're a reactionary, then you're on the right, then you're on the other side. And then they say that Trump was extremely divisive.
Personal life, and or at least in American politics, you have tweedly little bifocal, accountant money men who have spent 63 years trying to lower taxes for rich people, and they're also part of the coalition. They're everywhere, and they all fill in the gaps. They work and mesh and create a total narrative. With the Democrats, you get 57 people who will all tell you about how America is the hope of the dream of the future, of the stars which shine brightest in the dark sky or whatever. It doesn't. They all talk the same.
Yeah, and what gets lost in all of this too is the real attacks on Trump that I think are incredibly relevant that actually pierce through, which are not made. You know, I care as much about policy as anybody, and I can't tell you the last time I've seen anybody on TV or in the Democratic Party really lay out a good argument. Like, this is the guy who massively cut taxes for the wealthy and corporations and billionaires. This is the guy who ran on anti-outsourcing, but he outsourced 200,000 manufacturing jobs. He presided over a loss of 2.9 million jobs when he was president. 3 million people lost health.
I wouldn't trust Kyle Kulinsky with an anime pillow, let alone whatever he's saying right now. There's no way for me to believe anything he's saying is true.
They always reference Trump's economy, and then very rarely do they actually include the context that it all went to shit.
Well, no, this is
under
gish
COVID.
galloping. He's giving a bunch of examples really quickly without caring about their accuracy or relevance.
Yeah, what their context is, because whenever they go, "Oh, Trump had all these losses," they always scan over the fact that it happened during COVID and like it was outside of his control. They never reference that.
In September of 2020, Joe Biden was running on how high Trump's unemployment was. In September of 2020,
it's crazy. And the middle, I mean, it was chaos. The businesses were forced to close.
Is it really so crazy to think that COVID was intentional to fuck with Trump?
No.
Is it really that crazy?
No, especially because like the sort of like globalists, the whole globalist infrastructure out there, Klaus Schwab
Yeah,
is the
how
front man.
he's talking about how Republicans are all talking to each other. Oh, the left isn't globally connected at all, right?
But I mean, they've literally they've written books about using a future pandemic in order to reorder and restructure the world for the next reset, the Great Reset, the Great Reset. And
You mean
it ended up happening.
The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab?
Yes, the book, The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab. These people predict the future, and then you're just like, well, are they actually enacting these plans? I think these people capitalize on the chaos of the world while also having plans, and then they have like contingencies put in place in order to try to make it work out for them as best as possible.
Oh my God, Patrick, what if I told you that in a later episode we could go much deeper into that?
My nips would be pretty hard. I'd be pretty excited. They could cut some fucking glass, I'll tell you that much.
Soften those nipples. Stop it.
This Michelob Ultra is terrible. Continue.
Health insurance under him. Compare that to the Democrats, who are neoliberal, and we could criticize them a lot, but they gave 50 million people health insurance. Trump appointed more billionaires and Wall Street CEOs in his administration than anybody in history. He filled the NLRB with union busters. He screwed over 8 million workers and deprived them of overtime pay. And so, like, the big fear here, this is like the most grounded criticism of Trump we can make, is it's going to be a fourth term of George W. Bush. Like, I agree with you. There's a chance that the authoritarianism gets messed up because of the incompetence. That is definitely possible. We have to hope that's the case. But beyond that, we know for sure they're going to keep this train.
So Trump is an authoritarian, and if none of that happens, it's because he's incompetent. This is what they did with January 6th. He tried to, but he failed. You could say that about anything. Kyle Kulinsky tried to rape a dog, but he just failed. You could say anyone tried to do something and failed. It's so cowardly.
I know. I just love that they have to build plausible deniability into their accusations.
Everything.
So if what they're saying doesn't end up happening, it only happened because their enemies are politically and
it's baked into the
retarded.
accusation.
Yes, I mean it's genius. I mean this is what narcissists do.
It's super fucking obvious to me.
It's super obvious. It's super obvious to us because we study it. We know how they work. But to other people, though, they're like, "Oh, look at that! Kyle Kulinsky was actually kind of correct."
If I'm wrong, here's why.
Yeah.
Chugging along in the same sort of pro-establishment way that it's been our entire lifetimes. And that is the real thing that leads to hatred and resentment and people looking for scapegoats. You just have to give them the right enemy.
The real lunatics in the cabinet picks have been for the Pentagon, so it doesn't oppose him, so he can oust like disfavorable generals, and Matt Gaetz for AG because he wants to persecute his enemies. Apart from that, in every economic position, it is more status quo. It is continue to cut taxes for the wealthy. It is like continuation of austerity politics, get rid of the welfare state to whatever extent it still exists. It is basically the same through line, and you get like you get the same like war hawks and neocon, like Marco Rubio, for example. You know, you see all of the underlying patterns remain the same. It's a lot of dressing over the same cake, and I think that, you know, I agree with you. I think that our success moving forward, I guess, is going to be like attacking those on the underlying motives, not going into the resist lib like Trump is such an authoritarian line on its own, because for one, we don't know how much that'll be committed to. For two, a lot of Americans like authoritarianism. And for three, their support for authoritarianism is conditional.
How is that not just that this is what the ACP says? People like authoritarianism. They like a government in control. That is just predictive programming.
It is, especially with Vaush. I love how Vaush calls himself a libertarian socialist. It's like, it's funny too, because it's two opposite ends. It seems like two opposite ends of the dialectical spectrum, and yet socialists and libertarians both crave the exact same kind of society. They just differ slightly in how to get there. It's fascinating he calls himself that.
Vaush is really on the pulse of what most people want, right?
Oh yeah, no, he's definitely a big holder of popular opinions. So him and Hassan,
on the assumption that it's being done for their interest, getting rid of illegals or criminals or whatever. And as long as people assume that, they will agree with all of the, anti-democratic measures he takes. I think that the Kamala Harris campaign literally looked and they saw the saving democracy angle, that line of approach when trying to convince people, was ineffective. It led to a reduction in support for them to focus.
The saving democracy angle, they didn't mean it. It's just optics. It's just rhetoric. What do you mean the saving democracy angle? Did they not mean it? Everything's an angle to them.
Focus on that, because when people hear preserving our democracy, they really hear preserving the status quo, which very few people like right now. So, no one likes the idea of the country being run by a bunch of autocratic, billionaires who only care about their taxes, which is why Trump supporters have to delude themselves into believing that they're doing it as some kind of like greater Make America Great Again plan, I guess. It's just a matter of separating that reality from their perception.
And here's a thought. There was somebody wrote an article on this the other day, and I thought it was brilliant because I didn't think about it in these terms, but it actually seems like the obvious answer after the fact. But if you could say, here's one thing that absolutely would have changed the outcome of the election, I think if they got that original Build Back Better bill passed, I think Kamala would have won. Because in that bill, you had paid family leave, you had childcare, universal pre-K, free community college, expanding Medicare, higher minimum wage, lowering all prescription drug prices, not just a few.
Oh my gosh!
Expanded child tax credit, and I think that would have been enough of delivering for people materially where Democrats would have won. And so, if you really want to pin this election on any one or two people, I think you can squarely lay it at the feet of Kyrsten Sinema, and you can squarely lay it at the feet of Joe Manchin.
If only the Democrats would have been able to enact more purist socialist policies, only then would have Kamala Harris would have won. Only then.
Yeah, you know what? It's a shame. So imagine the inflation that we would have where after the country's flooded with illegals that they're paying for, and then after they sent over $100 billion to Ukraine, then we're supposed to be able to afford all of these government handouts.
Yeah,
inflation would have been great. Oh, we would have loved that. That would have been great.
I know.
Those two should have been waking up every morning with horse heads in their damn beds. The Joe Biden strategy of like kowtowing to them and going and negotiating, then negotiate with the Republicans, then so on and so forth, and it did nothing, and it never does anything. It never ever works. And if they had gotten it passed as well, and this speaks to your earlier point about their policy, Democrats never really tout their policy. I think that like with Republicans, if they have a point they want to make about Kamala Harris being woke or letting in illegal immigrants or whatever, they'll make it 50 million times and they'll describe it in the most lurid, borderline pornographic terms possible. I mean, they will really drive it home. Whereas the Democrats' criticisms of, let's say, healthcare, Donald Trump trying to repeal the ACA for like nearly a decade now and never having a single plan to replace it, all they went with was he has concepts of a plan. Is that bad? Sure. But to the average American, that doesn't mean anything. The average voter is, respectfully, not that informed on policy or what that even means. The average voter doesn't even know what the ACA is. You have to like day by day.
I just love that
they know what it is.
The entirety of the left is terrible at messaging. These two fucking idiots that are awful at messaging are like, dude, let us tell the Democrats are awful at messaging. Let us tell you guys how to be good at messaging.
That's like when Hassan starts speaking about policies and starts voicing what he thinks is a popular opinion, and everyone's like, what are you talking about, Hassan? Like, nobody thinks what you're saying is popular. You're an insane online communist.
But there's this insane media machine that keeps him relevant. Isn't that strange how he can't fail? It's almost like they're imbued with the power of government where they just can't fail.
Yeah. That is what it seems like.
Every time you're in front of a microphone, like he wants you to die. If you scraped your toe on the sidewalk when you were 6 years old, he wants you to not be able to get insurance and die, and they don't do that because it's like, it's mean or it's
and they
uncivil.
suck at
Yeah, why don't they say that? Why don't they make unbelievably hyperbolic statements like that, which is what they've been doing? But you know what? We need to be more divisive and more extreme. Let's say he wants you to scrape your toe and die. Why aren't we saying that? Because they think it's going to be mean. Am I going crazy? Is that what he just said?
Yes, that's what he said.
Okay.
That is what he said.
Good strat. Hey, I love winning. Great strat.
politics. Yeah, they just suck at basic politics. So here's the fact that a lot of people don't remember. It's almost like a Mandela effect thing where everybody memory hold this, but I remember it. In 2017, Trump tried to do a healthcare bill. It was called like the American Healthcare Act or something like that, and it was called Trump Care for short by the media. And Kaiser Family Foundation, which does healthcare stuff, they did a poll on this. They found that Trump's bill had 8% support in the country. And this is what he tried to ram through. And the reason it was so unpopular is because it did get rid of protections for pre-existing conditions.
What are the Vegas odds that they're so addicted to polls is because they can just find information that agrees with their confirmation bias? Wow,
Yeah,
the polls
absolutely.
said that. Oh, dude, please always trust the polls. Never learn your fucking lesson.
Yes,
Don't
absolutely.
actually talk to
Especially-
people. Just just treat them like ants and just look at a piece of paper and just go, yeah, see?
Especially, I mean, look at the publications that create these polls that they are constantly referencing. I mean, look at the publications; they're all left leaning. So these two assholes are going to get their own preconceived notions.
Well, I mean, look at all the
confirmed
trans
by
studies.
these
They really
companies.
went through that with a fine-tooth comb, right?
Yeah, and I do love how they keep saying like Kyle is really, really putting on blast how they keep blaming trans people. Like he's obsessed with it. He keeps saying it over and over and over again. I would love to have a conversation about it. Not that it would actually achieve anything. It's the worst.
Made it so that the states had to opt into it or opt out of it. And what would have happened is the same thing that happened with Medicaid expansion under Obama. All the red states would have been like, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna opt into it. So there goes your protections for pre-existing conditions. Nobody knows this. Nobody talked about this. Nobody brought this up. Here's another story.
Nobody knows this. Nobody talks about this. Nobody brings it up. Only the Gnostic Kyle does. Only he knows this. Wow, Kyle, you're so special.
I also can't. I have to harp on the trans thing again because when it gets down to it, it is a matter of faith that it is not accurate that you have a gender identity, or at least you can't define it or prove it.
Right.
So we shouldn't experiment on people based on something that is not materially true. And it really comes down to them being just like, well, why not? And they're godless, right? They're godless and they don't believe in nature because they want to circumvent nature, because they want to circumvent human nature.
It was a vaccine that was made in 9 months, but wasn't experimental.
Yes, and that's what it really comes down to at the end of the day, is that, like, to them, they're like, okay, well, you can't prove it. Well, who cares? Why
No,
not?
they can prove it. They'll just
No,
change
they
the
can't-
language.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, no, eventually, though, if you talk to them, they go, yeah, well, you can't really prove it. And then they eventually go, well, who cares, though? Like, there's no
Why do you
reason for
care?
why-
It's not bothering you. It's what they
what
want to do.
Exactly. But to them, though, there's no reason why you should not sully God or nature's work. They just don't care. they don't see any reason for why
They have
you
no
should
first
not-
principles.
Yeah, they just don't care. They don't care because they really don't believe it. All they believe in is power, so they really don't believe in anything.
They don't start with an idea. They end with an idea and try and go to the beginning.
Yes.
Story that just came out yesterday. There's a MAGA judge in Texas, federal judge in Texas, appointed by Trump in 2019. He just, like that, decided, I'm going to throw out this new rule that Biden signed, which increases overtime pay for 4 million Americans. The line used to be $35,000 and under. If you do that, if you make that much, you're guaranteed overtime by law. It's mandatory. Biden tried to raise it to $58,000.
Like doubling it nearly. It's huge.
Nearly doubling it. And boom, just like that, a MAGA judge threw it out. Now, let me ask you, have you heard anybody bring this up? Any Democratic politician, anybody in traditional media, anybody in new media? Has anybody brought this information? And no, the answer is no. There were some articles on it. I saw it. I talked about it on my show. It doesn't get brought up. And this is part of what drives me crazy and what feels like I live in the Twilight Zone. Is like, I thought all of us were living in the same shared reality. And if I see this thing, which is really interesting and really terrible and paints a bad picture of Trump and the Republicans, then we'll all talk about it like it matters, because it does matter, because now you just screwed 4 million people out of maybe being able to pay the light bill, right? But no, it doesn't get brought up. And that's why I'm in my, I don't know what you can call this era,
Black pill
era.
No, and you know what? Honestly, and I agree with you. One of the things that really gets me as well is that it's difficult to tell whether or not it's an unsolvable gap in the information environment, or just the Democrats being terrible at messaging. Maybe if the Democrats were really good at politics, or at least as good at it as Republicans, we wouldn't have this issue, and people would see enough pushback on these issues that they would make better choices. Or maybe if the Democrats were more effective at messaging, it still wouldn't make a difference, because a lot of people just get their information from like talk radio or Joe Rogan or whatever, and they wouldn't get that info at all. I don't know. I want to.
How is it 2024 and they don't know how to have effective messaging? How much more time, technology? Honestly, just go to AI and ask it, Democrats. Like, what the fuck? What's it gonna take? You're not human beings. I'm sorry. I don't mean this to dehumanize them, but they're not human beings to me. There's no other way I can say that.
If they want effective messaging, all they have to do is just talk to Kyle and Vaush here, because Kyle and Vaush have all the answers.
Oh my God.
Say the Democrats should be better at messaging, but I don't know whether that would be enough to cross the gap currently. Maybe it would be, and maybe this wouldn't be so much of an issue. It's that ambiguity that frustrates me, because I feel like you've got two avenues, one of which is like, okay, do I sensibly try to advocate for the Democrats to not suck at politics as much? And the other avenue is like, we literally live in two different realities. The average Republican doesn't even know what the ACA is and wouldn't know if it was taken away from them. And if it was taken away from them, they would blame Biden. They would hear from talk radio that if your health insurance got taken away under Trump's...
See, this is what would happen. We're not talking about what has happened. See, if Trump was so bad, why wouldn't they just bring up his presidency and how bad it was? Isn't that strange? He was already president, so just talk about how bad his presidency was. Wouldn't that be like rhetorically very compelling? Don't you think?
It's a little strange. It's a little queer. It's a little bit of all the things.
It's very fucking queer.
It's so queer. I mean, because that's the thing.
Trump is normal, and they have to be against Trump.
Yes, and they're just like the mainstream media in that they cannot accurately critique Trump. Like they can't. I don't.
You shouldn't have to lie if he's that bad.
I don't think they're capable of critiquing Trump, because they live in such a hyper real existence that they don't understand what's real and what's fake. How can you criticize reality accurately if you don't understand what's happening?
It's like critical race theory. Their critique, the way that they use that, is within their own framework, which is their own reality.
Yeah, it makes sense within their own subjective view of reality. Yeah, because they're fucking crazy.
Second term, it was because of some Biden bill that passed in like 2023, and they would accept it, and then they would die from, I don't know, appendicitis or something.
Yeah, but see, that's why it's incumbent on us to drag people back to reality and take away these two realities, force it to become one reality. And something that I've come to realize lately is that it really is true. We're gonna take our time with that. We're just really gonna let that sink in, okay? Yeah, but see, that's why it's incumbent on us to drag people back to reality and take away these two realities, force it to become one reality. And something that I've come to realize lately is that it really is true.
Right.
Do you mean a synthesis? So he wants to take the thesis and the antithesis and then make it into a synthesis. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, but that's why it's important. Like, I'm okay with like wantonly throwing around the word communism, okay? They throw around Nazi where it doesn't apply. If you throw around communism like how they throw around Nazi, you may not be correct, but you're invariably going to be more correct than when they accuse anyone of being a Nazi.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
Is Marxist thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
The issue is people's realities.
I just love that he's...
And persuading them is liberalism.
Yeah.
It's up to these two fucking guys to prescribe the new reality.
They are the ones that are going to bring us into the promised land and detail the true reality. We're in such good hands. It's going to go swimmingly. Kill me. Just stab me.
Like you've got two avenues, one of which is like, okay, do I sensibly try to advocate for the Democrats to not suck at politics as much? And the other avenue is like, we literally live in two different realities. The average Republican doesn't even know what the ACA is and wouldn't know if it was taken away from them. And if it was taken away from them, they would blame Biden. They would hear from talk radio that if your health insurance got taken away under Trump's second term, it was because of some Biden bill that passed in like 2023, and they would accept it, and then they would die from, I don't know, appendicitis or something.
Yeah, but see, that's why it's incumbent on us to drag people back to reality and take away these two realities, force it to become one reality. And something that I've come to realize lately is that it really is true. People like you and I need to get out there and we need to confront these idiots face to face. Like, we need to debate them. We need to get our points across. I was just on Piers Morgan earlier today trying to do exactly that. It's like
fun combo.
Somebody's got to spread the message, right? And because nobody in mainstream media is going to spread the message. Most of independent media is totally shameless and pathetic and Trump ball coddlers now. So it's on people like us to do it, and it's people like us who actually know. For example, Trump made $160 million from foreign countries while he was president. Jared Kushner took $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. Oh, would you look at that? Trump at the UFC event was sitting next to a top Saudi government official.
The head of
the 34 felonies that Trump has. You would think one of them would be whatever the fuck Kyle's talking about, right? I love how they do all these chintzy little lawsuits against Trump, but there's so many real things that they could prosecute him on, but they just choose to go for bullshit. That's the reality he's living in.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like it's really funny. Listen to what they're saying, right? These two assholes basically position them as like the communist type of revolutionaries that will critique the Democratic Party. But then you listen to like the ACP, and the ACP will actually accurately critique the political persecution of Trump, which these people should be doing, because what's happening is that just the system is attacking Trump because Trump is basically like a virus that is infesting the system, and it wants to get rid of him because it's Trump exists outside of the system. So these guys should want to accurately critique that, but they don't care. They don't care. All they care about is just protecting the establishment.
Honest, upfront communists call them liberal. They're acting like they're against liberals, but they are
true.
They're the first ones to get shot in the head once the ACP takes over, right?
Yeah, 100%. Oh, these guys, are you kidding me? The ACP would probably shoot these guys in the head, like you said, the first, because they hate these people because they're a bastardization of true ACP communism.
Yeah.
Of their sovereign fund. Yeah, $1 trillion locked up in that.
Right, so they can cry about Hunter Biden's cock and balls all day and act like it's the biggest scandal in the world with his laptop or whatever, and however many hundreds of thousands he got from...
They do this weird thing where the only time I hear about Hunter Biden's dick is from the left saying that the right keeps talking about Hunter Biden's dick. Have you noticed that at all?
It's the same thing with accusing anti-trans, anti-mutilation people of being obsessed with kids' genitals. Same mechanism. Yeah, they're bastards. Bastard-coded bastard is a bastard filling.
Burisma or whatever. But there is no counter narrative where people are like, you're talking about the small beans of a couple $100,000 from Burisma when Jared Kushner took $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. We don't even know how much money Trump himself took from Saudi Arabia.
So that was bad, but what they did is worse. It's only a couple $100,000. It's just so strange that we've had this follow-up with Biden's connection to Ukraine for so many years, and then all of a sudden he feeds $100 billion to Ukraine when he's president. But it's only $200,000.
And the fact that all of this narrative was set up around Trump and Ukraine, and then Trump leaves office, and then we instantly enter into a war, or a proxy war that we're essentially fighting for Ukraine through Russia, and then Ukraine is also mentioned to be like one of the big testing sites for these like futuristic cities that are happening. Yep. And the fact that Ukraine is supposed to be a democracy, and yet it closes and persecutes Christian Orthodox churches and gets rid of all dissenting political opinion. And these assholes are literally just carrying water for the establishment while thinking they're a part of the revolution. I don't understand how they look at themselves in the mirror every day. I don't get it.
Well, they don't see a reflection, so it's pretty easy.
These live golf events, the Saudi Professional Golf League, he hosts those events at his courses. They've probably already paid him over $100 million for that.
The hotel he had.
What the fuck do you think they're going to get? Yeah, the hotel
in DC, where Eddie, if you wanted to talk policy with him, you just go over there and like kiss his toes. My hope for messaging, I guess, in the future, because I agree, we got to try the best that we can. My hope for messaging in the future is that, like, I remember that under the first Trump term, and I only started making content like in the middle of it because you've been doing this for a lot longer than I have, but I remember during Trump's administration, Trump supporters were a lot more defensive about him.
By the way, that video I showed of Vaush being the most transphobic I've ever heard anyone be, and he was correct in everything he was saying, was during Trump's presidency, just so you know. That was like
really
between 2017 and 2019. That video was posted in August of 2020. It was during Trump's presidency when he said that. So
that's hilarious.
him because they were living in a world where Trump was in charge and everything still sucked. And as soon as Biden got in power, they all got impossible to talk to. Because everything that went wrong was Biden's fault, and everything all of Trump's proposed solutions were magically effective, if only they could be implemented. And I'm hoping that now that Trump is entering a second term, there are going to be a lot more Trump supporters who are kind of like awkwardly shuffling around. Wait, why is everything still so expensive? Why am I still making not enough money to pay for rent? Why are none of these problems getting fixed? And that state of like defensiveness or self-awareness might make them a little easier to reach. If not for that, though, then it's just a
I can't help but notice they're ignoring the dictionary definition of neoliberalism, where they're cutting down the amount of government bureaucracy, which is going to free up a lot of budget, I think. Cutting all these deadweight jobs from the government, kind of leaving that out.
Just a little bit, just a tad.
Matter of waiting it out. There's no way that a government this incompetent and kleptocratic can maintain its hold indefinitely. At some point, there will be a break.
This government that's incompetent and kleptocratic, is he talking about the most popular president in history, Joe Biden's administration, where they were like, dude, we're going to fucking force you to not run?
Well, that's the thing, is that, so like these people, these two assholes position themselves, they're not so Destiny is just a straight up water carrier and a cuck for the Democrats, right? Whereas these two assholes position them as someone like, these guys are more overtly communistic and they're willing to quote unquote critique the Democratic Party, whereas Destiny's like, guys, I love everything you're doing, it's fucking going swimmingly. Yeah, exactly. Destiny deep throats them, whereas these guys just like, manage to get the tip in just a little bit.
Well, Destiny is a capitalist, but he doesn't have a lifestyle without being on the left.
Yeah, that's true.
Is he really going to be honest and be centrist or right-leaning when he's polyamorous and just wants to be a degenerate fucking coomer? No, he has to fucking be on the left to have his lifestyle.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, these people are always impossible to talk to, but it's the weight of the culture that moves the whole country politically. And what I mean by that is, you saw the weight of the culture get Trump back in the White House with all the Joe Rogans and the Andrew Schultz and the Tim Dillons and the Theo Vons and all these people who are either outright political or semi-political, and they ended up humanizing Trump and getting him back in the White House.
They all did. Every not political, independent thinker ended up siding Trump in this election.
Now, what would happen?
Yeah, that's reality. When you don't know anything about politics and you're like, oh, I'm just going to listen as objectively as humanly possible. Yeah, they chose Trump. And that makes them so mad, and it's so entertaining to watch.
It's hilarious, yeah. Especially because, that's one of my really good friends never paid attention to politics, and he's a smart guy. And the second he started paying attention to politics, he was essentially like, "Oh, all this stuff is just bullshit." Like, he immediately deduced that the mainstream media was BS, and then he just noticed which political party does the mainstream media parrot their opinions the most, and then he basically aligned himself against the Democrats. That's what normal people do that are inculcated by this nonsense.
It's not that we're right-wingers, we're against the Democrats.
Yeah, we're
That's
anti-communist.
The party is not the fucking communists. That's the party.
Exactly.
Anti-communist.
Exactly, and the fact that Democrats are instituting their sort of neoliberal Fabian socialist communist program in the name of liberalism is what really pisses us off, and why you might even say that we're done with it.
Nope, not yet. No, we're not done with it yet. We're not done with it yet.
Oh, where's my pillow?
We're not done with it yet. I know you want to be done with it, and I also want to be done with it. But I'm not done with it quite yet. I'll be done with it soon.
Happen if the roles were reversed and it was Kamala Harris going on popular podcasts and they were trying to get her across the finish line, and you had people who were somewhat political but not fully political who were kind of helping her out. And if the roles were reversed, you know what the right would have done? They would have screamed bloody murder and never shut up about how fraudulent not only Kamala Harris is, but how fraudulent all of the podcasters are and how little they know about politics and how they're all vibes based and they're idiots. And they would have screamed so hard and worked the refs so hard that they would have probably battled that shit out to a tie where it wouldn't have even necessarily helped Kamala Harris to do that, right? And that's where we're lacking. That's the only thing you and I can even control, really, is how much we can try to shift the narrative, because it really is the case that the right 100% sets the full conversation for the nation these days. And I cannot live in that reality anymore. I can't bear it. All the shit I know that Trump has done policy-wise and stuff he wants.
Proof that they hate free speech. Right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free speech controls the narrative. And free speech is against you guys pushing your already thinking you know what people want, already thinking you know what they need, and they just need to, they're children, and they just need to be explained that this is what you want and why you want it, and this is what this is.
So they have the people that they're talking about, that they're condescending to, they have to listen to the correct information, but then they also have to absorb the information correctly. So it's like a two-step process, and these are the guys that are going to help them absorb.
Well, it's like reading Marx. You have to interpret it correctly. It's in there somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wants to do and things that everybody should be aware of. People don't know it, bro. They don't know it, and it's like we gotta get it through their heads.
The year is 2027. The recent the recent collapse of like a funding bill has been blamed on like trans people in bathrooms or something. I don't know. It's the infinite cycle. This has been happening for far longer than the Trump administrations, of course. I mean, the very like origins of union mobilization in the United States were rooted in efforts by the owners of those factories and looms and businesses trying to divide like black and white workers, or saying that immigrants from Mexico were coming in to take their jobs, which is why you shouldn't.
Owners of those factories. You are talking to a Marxist when you say owners of those factories, when there's the internet. Their entire knowledge of economics is predicated on widgets and factories before the internet. There's nothing more they hate than how the internet industrialized how people make money.
Oh, they're furious about it. They're furious about, James Lindsay calls it essentially the second enlightenment. We had the first enlightenment with like Martin Luther and the printing press, right? So then information was no longer gatekept. Now we have the internet, which is the second age of enlightenment. So people are able to make up their minds about this information, and they don't like that.
Or start their own businesses so quickly. Like these streamers, for example, on the internet, and they're millionaires.
Yeah, it's funny because they want to take advantage of a system that they want it closed off to other people, because they don't want other people to be able to express their views.
You mean like fucking Karl
views.
Marx, who was never a fucking worker and had his life paid for him by Engels?
Yep. The very same Karl Marx.
It's incredible how they really gravitate toward this ideology of preaching to the working class while they're making all the money and barely have to lift a fucking finger. It's like, it was built by fucking cluster B sociopaths.
I'm just really interested to see what'll finally be. I'm assuming complete societal collapse and the destruction of the past in terms of obtaining information is what will finally destroy what Karl Marx created. But the impetus for why he created it has always been there, and it's like intrinsic in mankind. So it's like there's always going to be communists. You just got to keep an eye on them and flick them in their dick if they get too.
It's a parasite. A part of life is poison ivy, parasites, cancer.
And that's why the Christian theology is so timeless, I think, because it has so much. There's so much truth.
I completely agree and support it.
Yeah, so much truth, the like timeless truth to it that explains human nature.
Well, that's why they hate Christianity, because it was made before communism, before Marx's version of communism,
and it's specifically built around denying the satanic communist impulse. It is literally a religion designed around denying their impulse they want humanity to embrace.
We really don't reflect on that in the United States, how incredible it is that the founding fathers, whatever racism, slavery, whatever, ended it, but also created this framework that preceded Marx.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is in 1776. He made that shit in the mid 1800s.
1880s, something like that.
This country somehow, by the grace of God, created a foundation and a division of power that preceded the fucking devil that was going to happen less than a century later. That's pretty incredible.
It is.
Unionize with them because they're like part of the enemy. They're going to depreciate everyone's wages. There's always been an effort to like shuttle off the real conversations and get people to focus on things like be fearful of this group, of that group. Maybe like as things continue to get worse, which they will, not just here but all across the board. Right, like
he's talking about making people fearful, and in the next fucking breath he goes, it's gonna get bad. Literally calls out what they're doing and then does it immediately after.
Yep, they can't help it. It's just their way.
This is not the only country where the incumbent liberal is losing ground rapidly to a fascist opponent. France, Britain, Germany, Canada soon. all in the exact same boat. And we're going to enter like a dark age, and where we come out.
See, now they're immediately oppressed. They have all this global power for the past 4 to 8 years. And now all of a sudden, once they lose one election, now all of a sudden it's a right-wing takeover. That's Marxist. Now all of a sudden they are the oppressed. And all of a sudden they have no power, even though they're making millions of dollars.
Yes. It's also really funny that he talks about entering into a dark age, because the political movements and positions that these people uphold in terms of sustainability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is specifically designed to deindustrialize the global north, like America, Russia, or the West. And then through equity, redistribute communism, redistribute everything over to all these other countries. So like, if his positions are followed through, we literally will be entering into another dark age. And yet he's saying that Donald Trump is going to enter us into that dark age, which he actually might on accident. So we'll see if that actually happens. But
on the other side, I think will just be a matter of whose principled message wins out the most. And it's up to us, I guess, to make sure that it's not the Democrat consultancy class smugly telling people, see, we told you, you did actually want like a $25,000 first-time home buyer tax credit. That was the solution the entire time, and you were wrong to vote against Hillary Clinton in 2016.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it when people said like, bro, Kamala Harris isn't even mentioning any policies. And it's like, what the f are you talking about? Yes, she is. She's repeatedly talked about a ban on price gouging to buy groceries and the $6,000 child tax credit. And people were giving J.D. Vance as if he was in favor of an extended child tax credit. They had a vote in the Senate to do it.
Is the epitome of communism telling private companies the prices that they're allowed to make? That's actually, can we agree that's Dengism? Can we agree that that's Chinese state-owned capitalism?
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely. It's an outer shell of communism with an inner shell of free market capitalism that is controlled by the ruling class of society.
The government controls the prices. It's literally China, which is what, by the way, the American Communist Party is like, see how great China's doing? That's communism. What the ACP is calling communism in China is what Kamala Harris proposed in the United States, but we can't call it communism.
Yeah, and it makes sense with how, with what communism, right? Because communism is basically just a concerted effort to consolidate power in order to try to sort of force humanity into like this sort of apocalyptic vision of us creating the perfect human being. And so it just looks at every era of society and it goes, what works, what doesn't? We'll take what works, discard the stuff that doesn't, and then incorporate what works into our system. So Dengism is it's genius if you're looking at it from the communist perspective.
It's not genius. He just replaced private ownership with Chinese characteristics and state-owned capitalism.
Well,
I'm just saying that it's how it fucking fools people.
I'm saying that it's genius and that it allows them, to move.
That's
their
my own
forward.
hang up just then. I wasn't.
I get it. I get it.
Do exactly that, and he didn't even show up for it to vote for expand. Like,
you don't know what he would have done. Maybe he would have voted for it twice.
So they're really living in like it's not even. It's like anti-reality is what they live in. It's like when they all pretend like Trump is he's pro-free speech. This is what RFK was saying when he hopped on board the Trump train. He's like, the reason I'm supporting Trump is because he's pro-free speech, he's anti-censorship. And it's like, are you just, first of all, making shit up about Democrats? Yes, the answer is yes. And are you, second of all, denying the entire record of Trump on free speech stuff, how he wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail?
Hey, guess what? All of us 95% of us disagree with that.
Yeah, I'm with Kyle here. I'm with Kyle, pro Kyle here. Yeah, do not throw people in jail if you burn the American flag.
Do you see how we don't agree with that, and we don't think he's going to do it because of how unpopular it is?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost like you could disagree with somebody and then still, support the man overall.
But also, like, just to take a page out of their book, in terms of pure rhetoric, I understand why he said that. He's trying to institute a baseline level of nationalism in the country. So no, I'm not going to try and guess what's going on in his head, but I could understand that, like, yes, you would say something that crosses the line a little bit.
Yeah, and he's like
obviously
trying to be.
He's not going to fucking do that.
Yeah, he's like trying to get across how severe the social cost should be if somebody does something as un-American as that. Now, if they actually instituted that policy, then I'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to have to oppose you on this at this point.
Everybody would.
Yeah.
All of his constituents would.
Which has already been declared as unconstitutional.
Got the FCC appointed today. They are going to crack down on media outlets. They're going to be sending us cease and desists for covering the tariffs in a few months. I tell you.
And by the way, that guy was part of Project 2025, and Trump repeatedly said, "Bro, I don't know anything about Project 2025. What are you talking about?" Well, would you look at that? And again, I think the thing that drives me the most crazy, man, is like back in 2016, I really felt like, it is a lesser evil argument, and Hillary is a slightly lesser evil, but that's the end of it. This election was not that. It wasn't just a lesser evil and a greater evil. It was like the Republican Party has flat out gone insane. Like just 48 of them in the Senate voted against the right to.
Yeah, dude, the Republican Party, they're mutilating kids. They're flooding the country with illegals. I'm sorry.
I know, right?
Okay. So I just said those two things, okay? Let's see if he can top those two things right now, right? Those are pretty, horrific things.
Can I say that, to me, it's always, right, okay, you go to a dentist, right, and he's a great dentist, but then you also find out the dentist likes to rape kids in his off time. And then you go, well, you know what? He fills a good cavity, but I don't,
yeah, in two ways.
Oh, my God. But he fills a good tooth, but I don't know if, you know what? He rapes kids, so I'm not gonna, go to him anymore. That's how I feel when people really understand the depth and depravity of the gender movement with what it's doing to kids and people in general.
Right.
Once people discover that, they're just like, man, I might like that social safety net, but I really don't want to vote for the people that want to cut little Timmy's dick off. That's how I feel about that.
Yeah, there's probably a way to be a dentist without doing that other stuff.
Yeah, probably, I guess.
To IVF Act, as Trump was pretending like they were all in favor of IVF. Now they're talking about banning things like no-fault divorce.
That was particularly wild.
Okay, so we have IVF is under attack and no-fault divorce is under attack. Let's say that's true.
Okay.
Illegals flooding the country and mutilating kids is still worse than that.
Yeah, mutilating kids.
It's not true what he said, but even if it is true, that's how unrealistic he is. I can agree with him and still disagree with him as if I didn't agree with him. I can disagree with him or agree with him and still feel the exact same. That's a hyper reality. That's what that means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wild to me, the IVF thing, because it is a literally senseless opposition on their part. It doesn't make sense from their leadership. It doesn't make sense within their own doctrine. There's no economic or social incentive. Nobody wanted them to do it. Nobody was out there protesting against IVF. It was entirely like an unforced error. It's insane.
Insane. And for the life of me, I cannot fathom how Republicans are seemingly on the offense in the realm of the culture war and Democrats are seemingly on the defense. Now you have Democrats like Seth Moulton saying, yeah, let's throw trans people under the bus. In 2022, they had a vote in the Senate on protecting gay marriage. And guess what? 36 Republicans voted against it, and 169 Republicans in the House voted against it. They voted against gay marriage in 2022. Why the fuck are they not the ones on the defense here? We got to be the ones on the offense. It's insane to me. And the reason why we even had a vote on it is
because they're not cutting kids' dicks and tits off, Kyle. That's why.
Well, isn't it strange how Kyle just said that and you go, yeah, why isn't anyone talking about that? You're probably fucking lying.
Yeah, probably.
They probably wouldn't have to make shit up about Trump. And why would they focus on Project 2025 if they were voting against gay marriage? That's fucking strange, isn't it?
And here's the thing. Okay, you want to vote against gay marriage? Okay, then let them have civil unions and have all the same benefits that a marriage has. Yeah, with civil unions, right? Let them have all the same benefits with the civil union that they have with marriage. Okay, that's fine. Okay, not allowing gay people to get married. Okay, all right, you could have your opinion on that.
Steel manning it. Butchering. This is let's say whatever he's saying is completely true right now.
Butchering children to reify their gender, so Kyle, it's on another level, man. It's on another level. You stupid bitch of a person.
Because when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, they had a line in there like, maybe we'll look at gay marriage next. And you would have, nobody even knows that they had a vote on gay marriage and Republicans voted against it because nobody says it. Nobody talks about it. Again, to get back to the politicians being useless and independent media being useless. Nobody talks about these things.
At the very least, they should be forced to talk about it, like to the media. Like, hey, do you really still believe that gay marriage should be illegal? But again, the questions aren't going to, like, a Democrat can say, Kamala Harris can say back in the 2020 primary, I support Medicare for all, and then never talk about it again. And that's still an issue of import today. Meanwhile, like every Republican can be uniformly in favor of stuff that the average American thinks is reprehensible, and no one questions them on it. It's just shit they do. All the state Republican parties still have removing gay marriage from their state, not even like a turn it back to the states, banning it in their state as a part of their their state GOP doctrine, you know, but it's just accepted. I really do, like, it's just a little bit of hope within me. I do think that in spite of the media environment, in spite of how delusional it all is and how bad Democrats are at messaging and how captured independent and legacy media are, I still think that the average person, even the average Republican, would balk at a lot of the policies that Republicans want to put through. And I think that no amount of propaganda can keep them could keep them from responding negatively to it. If there were really mass arrests and deportations, I mean, like going into your local bars, restaurants, whatever, your neighborhood, military.
Whoever said that the mass deportations were going to be that? They hear mass deportation, and then they have the, as Kyle was saying, the narrative. He's saying what they should do, and they're already doing it. They're going to drag people out, and it's like, no, I mean, when Obama was president for 4 years, I think in 4 years he deported 3 million illegals. I'm pretty sure we could kick that up to maybe like double it, maybe like 10 million.
They just want to use evocative language to like remind you of like the Holocaust or something like that. That's all they're trying to do here.
Wait a minute. The people that are talking about a trans genocide are just gonna, I don't know, evoke the Holocaust out of nowhere just for any political purpose? Is that what you're saying?
It's so out of character for them. I'm shocked, honestly.
Down in downtown, requisitioning abandoned malls, you know, armored personnel carriers blocking roads as they march people in chains across it. If they really started revoking gay marriage or whatever, not every, but a lot of Republicans would say, well, hold on. I thought we were going after the bad ones. Well, hold on. I think that wokeness is bad, but I've got a gay cousin, you know? Like, he's not so bad. I do think we're better than this. And we've just...
Is he talking about deporting gay people? What is he talking about right now? He's moving at the speed of fright.
I don't like talking about, restricting transgender surgeries.
Hey, I have a gay cousin. You gonna deport him? I thought he was just talking about illegals.
Yeah, he's jumping from each intersectional group very quickly.
It's done a terrible job reminding people how bad it can get.
You're 100% right. It absolutely is going to happen. Their poll numbers are going to collapse. They're going to be universally despised. It's going to happen relatively quickly. Again, the question is, who's waiting in the wings to pick up the mantle after the fact? Because I don't want...
Oh my god, dude. Okay, this thing it's so fucking boring. He's like, we had to remind people of how bad it can get. Did you have to remind the Jews of how bad the Holocaust was? People that were in the Holocaust, did you have to remind them how bad the Holocaust was? He's like, we have to remind people how scary it can be. That's propaganda.
Yeah, fear porn is what it is. Trying to scare people into, supporting their insane positions.
We have to remind people how bad it's going to be. Even though they don't feel like it's bad, we have to... Oh my god. Dude, I think I'm done with it, dude. We have to remind people how bad it is. If it's that bad. If you were had your leg chewed on by a dog, and somebody was like, hey dude, let me remind you how bad it was when your leg was chewed on by a dog. Let me remind you how bad it was.